Adrian Vale thought the screech of metal against metal would be the worst sound he'd hear that day. He was wrong. Far worse was the sound of his dead father's handwriting being read aloud by the woman whose husband his family had killed, the woman he'd just crashed into on a deserted Vermont road. The envelope she held contained three things: a confession, a list of names, and proof that Adrian's entire life had been a lie. And somewhere in the shadows of his billion-dollar empire, the people who'd murdered his father were already planning their next move. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stick with me until the end. You won't believe where this goes. The first thing Adrian Vale noticed when he regained consciousness was the silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that comes after violence. Thick and ringing and wrong. His head throbbed. The windshield had spiderwebbed into 1,000 cracks, and somewhere beneath the crumpled hood of his Mercedes GLS, coolant hissed against hot metal. Jesus, he muttered, pressing his palm against his temple. His fingers came away sticky. Blood. He blinked hard, trying to piece together what the hell had just happened. One moment he'd been cruising along Route 14, hands steady on the wheel, mentally rehearsing the acquisition pitch he'd deliver in Boston the next morning. The next, his brakes had gone soft. Then dead. The SUV had lurched forward like a spooked horse, and he'd slammed into something solid. Adrian shoved open the driver's door and stumbled out onto the gravel shoulder. The October air bit at his face. Around him, Vermont's mountains blazed with fall color, indifferent and beautiful. No other cars, no witnesses, just trees and sky and the wreckage of what was supposed to be a simple drive. And there, 15 feet ahead, was the truck, an old green Chevy pickup, pre-2000 by the look of it, with rust blooming along the wheel wells and a dented bumper that had clearly seen better days. Adrian's pristine Mercedes had T-boned it at an angle, crumpling the truck's passenger side. God damn it, Adrian breathed, his heart hammered. He needed to check if anyone was hurt. He needed to call his insurance company. He needed to... The driver's door of the pickup swung open. A woman stepped out. Adrian stopped walking. She was maybe 5'6", lean in that unself-conscious way that came from physical work rather than gym memberships. Dark hair pulled back in a careless ponytail, worn jeans, a faded canvas jacket, work boots caked in mud. She looked at the wreckage of her truck, then at Adrian, and her expression didn't change. Calm. Unreadable. "You okay?" she asked. Her voice surprised him, low and steady, without a trace of panic. Yeah, I think so." Adrian touched his forehead again. "You?" "Fine." She walked around the front of her truck, running her hand along the crumpled metal with the same detachment someone might use inspecting a broken fence post. Not angry, not upset, just assessing. Adrian felt a flicker of irritation. "Look, I don't know what happened. My brakes failed. I'll cover the damages, obviously. Full repair costs, rental car, whatever you need. Just give me your insurance information and we'll handle this quickly." The woman glanced at him. Something flickered behind her eyes. Amusement, maybe, or pity. "You're Adrian Vale," she said. It wasn't a question. Adrian went still. "Do I know you?" "No." "Then how? You look like your father." The world tilted slightly. Adrian's father had been dead for 9 years. People who'd known Richard Vale didn't typically hang around rural Vermont in beat-up pickup trucks. "Who are you?" Adrian asked slowly. The woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into the pocket of her jacket and pulled out a white envelope. Expensive paper, the kind Adrian's father had used for personal correspondence. The edges were worn, as if it had been handled many times. She held it out. Adrian didn't take it. On the front, in his father's unmistakable handwriting, were 4 words. For Adrian. When ready. "What is this?" Adrian's voice came out rougher than he intended. "Something your father asked me to keep safe," the woman said. "I've been waiting for you." "Waiting? I didn't even know I was coming through here until this morning." "I know." Adrian stared at her. "That doesn't make any sense." "Your brakes were tampered with," she said calmly. "Someone cut the hydraulic line. Probably while you were having breakfast at that diner outside Montpellier. You were supposed to crash somewhere along this route. I just made sure you crashed into me instead of a tree." For a moment, Adrian couldn't process the words. They sat in his brain like foreign objects. "You're insane," he said finally. "Maybe." The woman tucked the envelope back into her jacket. "But your brakes are still cut and you're still standing here with the letter your father wrote before he died. So you can call me insane, or you can listen." Adrian took a step back. This woman, whoever she was, had clearly mistaken him for someone else. Or she was running some kind of elaborate scam. Either way, he needed to get out of here, call the police, get back to civilization. "I'm calling 911, he said, reaching for his phone. "Go ahead." The woman leaned against her ruined truck, arms crossed. "When they get here, ask them to check your brake lines. And while you're at it, ask them why there's no cell service for the next 8 miles in any direction." Adrian looked down at his phone. No signal. "There's a landline at my place," the woman continued. 2 miles up the road. You can call whoever you want from there. Police, insurance, your lawyer. But if you're smart, you'll read that letter first. "Why would I go anywhere with you?" "Because someone just tried to kill you, Mr. Vale. And until you know who and why, every decision you make could be your last." Adrian laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" The woman's gaze didn't waver. "When's the last time you had your car serviced?" 2 weeks ago, full inspection." "By who?" "My company's fleet manager. Same guy who's handled my vehicles for 6 years." "Name?" "I don't see why—" "Name, Mr. Vale." "Dennis Corbin," Adrian snapped. "And I'm not answering any more questions until you tell me who you are." The woman was quiet for a moment. Then she pushed off from the truck and started walking toward the tree line. "My name is Vivian Ashford," she said over her shoulder. "And 10 years ago, your father's company killed my husband, Otoko." Adrian followed her. He couldn't have explained why exactly. Every rational bone in his body screamed at him to stay with the vehicles, wait for help, treat this like a normal accident. But nothing about this felt normal. The envelope, the way she'd said his father's name, the eerie certainty in her voice when she'd mentioned the brakes. And something else, something he couldn't quite name. A pull. Like standing at the edge of a cliff and feeling the wind tug at you. They walked in silence through a thin stand of birch trees. The ground was soft with fallen leaves. Somewhere overhead, a crow called out, harsh and lonely. "Where are we going?" Adrian asked. "My house." "You live out here?" "For the last 7 years." "Alone?" "Mostly." Not exactly forthcoming. Adrian studied her back, the way she moved through the woods without hesitation, stepping over roots and rocks with the ease of someone who'd walked this path 1,000 times. "You said your name is Ashford," he said. "Vivian Ashford." "That's right." The name tugged at something in Adrian's memory, something old. "The Ashfords from Connecticut?" "My family, yes." Adrian's mind raced. The Ashfords were old money, shipping magnates turned real estate developers. He'd met Vivian's father once, years ago, at some gala his own father had dragged him to. Gregory Ashford. Cold handshake, colder smile. "You're a billionaire," Adrian said slowly. "On paper. And you live in the woods." "I live where I want to live." They emerged from the trees into a clearing. At the center sat a barn, or what had once been a barn. Someone had converted it into a residence, replacing rotting boards with new cedar, adding tall windows that caught the afternoon light. Smoke curled from a chimney. A vegetable garden, half-harvested, sprawled along the south side. It was beautiful in a way Adrian didn't have words for. Simple. Intentional. Vivian climbed the porch steps and held the door open. "Coming?" Adrian hesitated at the threshold. This was insane. He should turn around, hike back to the road, flag down help. But he didn't. He stepped inside. Potat. The interior of the barn was warmer than he'd expected. Wood stove in the corner, throwing heat. Shelves lined with books, real books, the kind with broken spines and dog-eared pages. A workbench covered in tools and what looked like carpentry projects in various stages of completion. Everything smelled like sawdust and coffee. Vivian shrugged off her jacket and moved to the kitchen area, a simple setup with open shelving and a farmhouse sink. "You want something to drink?" "I want answers." "Fair enough." She filled a kettle and set it on the stove. "Sit." Adrian remained standing. You said my father's company killed your husband. It did. How? Vivian leaned against the counter, arms crossed. For the first time, Adrian saw something flicker across her face. Not anger exactly, but something deeper. Older. 12 years ago, Vail Holdings was overseeing a major commercial development in Hartford, she said. Luxury condos, high-rise office space, the whole 9 yards. My husband, Thomas, was the project foreman. He'd worked construction his whole life, good at his job. Careful. She paused, staring at something Adrian couldn't see. 3 months into the build, there was a collapse. 4th floor gave way, took out the supports below. 6 men died, including Thomas. The official report blamed faulty materials from a subcontractor. Insurance paid out. Case closed. I'm sorry for your loss, Adrian said quietly. But I don't see what that has to do with so... Your father knew the materials weren't faulty, Vivian cut in. He knew because he'd seen the safety reports. Engineers had flagged structural concerns weeks before the collapse. But pushing back the timeline would have cost Vail Holdings millions in penalties and delays. So someone made a call. Bury the reports. Keep building. Pray nothing went wrong. Adrian's chest tightened. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. You have proof? Vivian gestured toward the envelope in her jacket pocket. That's why he wrote the letter. The kettle began to whistle. Vivian turned off the burner and poured hot water into 2 mugs. She handed one to Adrian. Chamomile by the smell of it. He didn't drink. My father would never... Your father tried to make it right, Vivian interrupted. That's the point. He spent 2 years digging through records, tracking down the original reports, building a case. He was going to go public, expose everyone involved. But before he could, she trailed off. Adrian's throat felt dry. He died. Heart attack, Vivian said. Sudden, unexpected, very convenient for the people who didn't want the truth coming out. You think he was murdered? I know he was. Adrian set the mug down harder than he'd intended. Tea sloshed over the rim. This is insane. You're telling me my father uncovered some conspiracy, planned to blow the whistle, and then... What? Someone at Vail Holdings had him killed? Yes. And you know this because I helped him build the case. Adrian stared at her. What? Before Thomas died, I was an attorney, Vivian said. Corporate law, mostly. Mergers, acquisitions, contract disputes. Your father hired me to consult on a real estate deal about a year after the collapse. We worked together for 6 months. He was different than I expected. Sharp, principled. When he found out about my connection to the Hartford project, he didn't try to bury it. He asked questions, started digging. She moved to the window, looking out at the trees. Eventually, he told me what he'd found. The buried reports, the falsified inspections, the executives who'd signed off on everything. He wanted my help putting together a case that would actually hold up in court. So I did. Why didn't you go public after he died? Adrian asked. I tried. Vivian's voice went flat. 2 weeks after his funeral, someone broke into my apartment, trashed the place, took my laptop, my files, everything. A week after that, I was in a car accident. Brakes failed. Sound familiar? Adrian's stomach dropped. I survived, Vivian continued. Barely. Spent 3 months in the hospital. When I got out, I realized I had 2 choices, keep fighting and end up dead, or disappear. So I disappeared. Why didn't you go to the police? Vivian laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. With what evidence? Everything was gone. And even if I'd had proof, who do you think the police would have believed? A grieving widow with a vendetta, or the executives of one of New York's most powerful investment firms? Adrian couldn't argue with that. He'd seen firsthand how money and influence could reshape reality. But you kept the letter, he said. Your father gave it to me a week before he died. Told me if anything happened to him, I should hold on to it. Keep it safe. Wait for the right moment. And you decided the right moment was today? I decided the right moment was when you were ready to hear the truth, Vivian said. And someone cutting your brakes tells me the truth isn't willing to stay buried anymore. Adrian rubbed his face. This was too much. The crash, the letter, this woman with her calm voice and her impossible story. He needed time to think. Process. I need to call my office, he said. Let them know I'm okay. Phone's over there. Vivian pointed to an old landline mounted on the wall. Adrian crossed the room and picked up the receiver. Dial tone. He punched in his assistant's number from memory. 3 rings, then, Mr. Vale's office. Jessica, it's me. Mr. Vale, thank God, we've been trying to reach you for hours. Are you all right? I'm fine. I was in an accident, but I'm okay. Listen, I need you to do something for me. Of course. What do you need? Call Dennis Corbin. Have him pull the service records for my Mercedes. Every inspection, every repair, everything. I want it on my desk by tomorrow morning. A pause. Is everything okay? Just do it, please. Yes, sir. Adrian hung up. When he turned around, Vivian was watching him. You think I'm paranoid, she said. I think you've been through hell, Adrian replied, and I think grief does things to people. Read the letter. I don't... Read it, Mr. Vale. Then decide if I'm crazy. Vivian pulled the envelope from her jacket and held it out again. This time, Adrian took it. The paper felt fragile in his hands. He turned it over, studying the seal, still intact after all these years. His father's handwriting stared up at him, familiar and devastating, for Adrian. When ready. His hands shook slightly as he broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in his father's tight, controlled script. Adrian unfolded it and began to read. My kid. Adrian, if you're reading this, I'm dead. And if Vivian gave this to you, it means the people I've been investigating have either come after you or they're about to. I need you to know that everything I'm about to tell you is true. I've spent the last 2 years verifying every detail, and I've left evidence with someone I trust, someone outside the company who can corroborate everything if necessary. 12 years ago, Vale Holdings oversaw a construction project in Hartford that resulted in the deaths of 6 men. The official story was that faulty materials caused a structural collapse. That was a lie. The truth is that several executives within our company, including people I considered friends, ignored critical safety reports because fixing the problems would have delayed the project and triggered penalty clauses worth millions. They made a calculated decision. The cost of potential lawsuits would be less than the cost of delay. They were right, in a sense. We settled with the families quietly. The media moved on. No one at Vale Holdings faced consequences. I didn't know about any of this until 3 years ago, when I stumbled across a set of buried documents during a routine audit. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but the more I dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't negligence. It was a conspiracy. I confronted Marcus about it. He told me to let it go, said it was ancient history, that dragging it up would destroy the company and accomplish nothing. When I refused, he threatened me. Not overtly, Marcus is too smart for that, but the message was clear. I've been gathering evidence ever since, copies of the original safety reports, email trails, financial records showing how the settlement money was hidden in the books. I have everything I need to bring charges, but I'm running out of time. Someone knows what I'm doing. My office was searched last week. I've been followed. And yesterday I found out my life insurance policy was quietly amended to exclude death by misadventure. Marcus's signature was on the paperwork. If I die before I can expose this, I need you to finish what I started. Not because I expect you to want revenge, but because those men deserve justice. Their families deserve the truth. I know I wasn't always the father you needed. I was too focused on building the empire, on leaving you something solid. I thought money and power would protect you, but all I've done is build your life on a foundation of blood and lies. I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry I wasn't better, and I'm sorry you're reading this because it means I failed. The evidence is with Vivian Ashford. She's one of the few people I trust completely. She'll help you if you let her. Do the right thing, Adrian, even if it costs you everything, especially if it costs you everything. Dad. Adrian read the letter 3 times. Then he sat down on the nearest chair and stared at the floor. Vivian didn't speak. She just stood there, giving him space to process. My uncle, Adrian said finally. His voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Marcus. He's one of them, Vivian confirmed. Not the only one, but he's the one who orchestrated the cover-up. Your father was going to name him specifically in the criminal referral. Jesus Christ. Adrian's mind reeled. Marcus Vale had been a fixture of his entire life. His father's younger brother, the charming one, the deal-maker. Adrian had worked alongside him for nearly a decade, trusted him, respected him. "Where's the evidence?" Adrian asked. "Safe deposit box. A bank in Burlington. Your father set it up under a shell company. I'm the only one with access. Can you get it?" "Yes." Adrian stood abruptly. "Then we need to go. Now. Tonight." "It's not that simple," Vivian said. "Why not?" "Because if Marcus knows you're alive, he'll be watching, waiting to see what you do next. The second we make a move toward that evidence, we'll have a target on our backs." "We already have a target on our backs," Adrian shot back. "Someone cut my brakes, remember?" "Exactly. Which means they're nervous, sloppy. We can use that." Adrian paced the length of the room. "So what do you suggest?" "Lay low. Let them think you died in the crash, or at least that you're hurt and out of commission. Meanwhile, we figure out who's working with Marcus, who tampered with your car, who we can trust. I can't just disappear. I have a company to run. Meetings, a daughter." Adrian stopped. His daughter, Emma. "Is she safe?" Vivian asked quietly. "She's with my sister in Connecticut, but if someone's targeting me, call your sister. Don't tell her what's happening. Just make sure she keeps Emma close. No outings, no school trips, nothing public for the next few days." Adrian grabbed the phone again. His hands were steadier this time. He dialed his sister's number. "Adrian?" Caroline's voice was worried. "Where have you been? I've been calling." "I'm fine. Listen, I need you to do me a favor. Keep Emma inside for the next few days. Tell her I'm on a business trip and I'll call her soon." "What's going on?" "Nothing. Just trust me, okay?" A long pause. Caroline knew him well enough to read between the lines. "Okay," she said finally, "but you owe me an explanation." "I will. I promise." He hung up before she could ask more questions. When he turned back to Vivian, she was watching him with something that might have been sympathy. "She's lucky to have you," Vivian said. I'm all she has." "Your wife?" "Died when Emma was 2. Aneurysm. No warning." Vivian's expression softened. "I'm sorry." Adrian shrugged. He'd learned years ago that sympathy didn't change anything. "You said we need to figure out who's working with Marcus. How do we do that?" "You tell me," Vivian said. "Who at Vale Holdings has the most to lose if the truth comes out?" Adrian thought about it. The company employed hundreds of people, but only a handful had access to the kind of information that mattered. "Dennis Corbin," he said slowly, "my fleet manager. He'd be the one with easiest access to my vehicles." "Who else?" "Carl Patterson, chief financial officer. He's been with the company since before my father died. If there was a financial cover-up, he'd know about it." "Anyone else?" "Michael Torres, general counsel. And my uncle, obviously." Vivian nodded. 4 names. That's manageable." "What do we do with them?" "We start asking questions. Quietly. See who panics." Adrian looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time since they'd met. She was younger than he'd initially thought, maybe early 30s. But there was something in her eyes that made her seem older. Haunted. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Vivian was quiet for a moment. "Because your father tried to do the right thing, and it got him killed. Because my husband died for someone else's greed. And because if we don't stop these people, they'll just keep hurting people." "That's not the whole reason," Adrian said. She met his gaze. "No, it's not." "Then what?" "I'm tired of hiding," Vivian said simply. "I've spent 7 years in these woods telling myself I was safer here, happier. But the truth is, I've just been scared. And I'm done being scared." Adrian understood that. He'd built his entire life around control, schedules, contracts, contingency plans, because the alternative was admitting that the world was chaotic and fragile, and that nothing you did could ever truly keep the people you loved safe. "Okay," he said. "So what's the first move?" "You go back to New York," Vivian said. "Act normal. Rattled from the accident, maybe, but not suspicious. Meanwhile, I'll start digging into those 4 names, see if I can find any connections to what happened to your father. And then? Then we meet back here in 3 days. You bring me everything you can find about their financial records, their communications, Anything that looks off. I'll cross-reference it with what your father collected. Adrian nodded slowly. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was a start. What if something happens before then? Vivian pulled a burner phone from a drawer and tossed it to him. My number's programmed in. Don't call unless it's an emergency, and don't use your regular phone. They're probably monitoring it. Probably? Definitely. Adrian pocketed the phone. Anything else? Yeah, don't trust anyone. Not your assistant, not your closest advisor, not your uncle. Until we know who's clean, everyone's a suspect. Great, Adrian muttered. So just casual paranoia. It's not paranoia if they're actually trying to kill you. Fair point. What? Vivian drove him back to the crash site in an old Subaru she kept in the barn. They didn't talk much on the way. Adrian stared out the window, watching the mountains slide past, his mind churning through everything he'd learned. His father, murdered. His uncle, a conspirator. His entire life, built on lies. And this woman beside him, this stranger who somehow knew more about his family's secrets than he did. When they reached the wreckage, Vivian pulled over. Adrian's Mercedes was still there, though someone had apparently called it in. A state trooper was parked behind it, lights flashing. "You're up," Vivian said. Adrian climbed out. The trooper, a stocky guy in his 50s with a name tag that read Hansen, looked up as he approached. "This your vehicle, sir?" "Yeah, I'm Adrian Vale." "You okay? Paramedics are on the way." "I'm fine, just shaken up." Hansen walked around the Mercedes, inspecting the damage. "Hell of a crash. You're lucky you didn't go off the road." "Yeah." Adrian glanced at Vivian's truck, still crumpled where he'd hit it. "I hit that pickup." "Owner around?" "She left already. We exchanged insurance information." Hansen frowned. "You get her name?" "Vivian Ashford." "Local?" "I think so." Hansen made a note. "I'll need a full statement. What happened exactly?" "I was driving south on Route 14. Brakes failed. I tried to slow down but couldn't. Hit the truck." "Brakes just failed? Out of nowhere?" "That's right." Hansen's expression shifted slightly, skepticism creeping in. "When's the last time you had your vehicle serviced?" 2 weeks ago, full inspection." "Mind if I take a look?" Adrian's pulse quickened. "Go ahead." Hansen crouched near the front wheel, peering underneath. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up, brushing dirt off his hands. "Mr. Vale, I'm going to recommend we tow this vehicle to a state-certified mechanic for a full safety inspection." "Why?" "Because it looks like your hydraulic line was deliberately cut." Adrian felt the world narrow to a pinpoint. "Cut? You're sure?" "I'm sure. This wasn't wear and tear. Someone tampered with your brakes." "Jesus." Hansen pulled out a notebook. "Any idea who might want to hurt you?" Adrian thought about the letter in his pocket, about Marcus, about the men his father had planned to expose. "No," he lied. "No idea." 3 hours later, Adrian was in the back of a taxi heading toward Burlington International Airport. His Mercedes had been towed. The state police had taken his statement and promised to follow up. Hansen had strongly suggested Adrian not drive anywhere until they'd completed their investigation. Fine by Adrian. He had no intention of getting behind the wheel until he knew who'd tried to kill him. He pulled out the burner phone and stared at it. Vivian's number glowed on the screen. He thought about calling her, but what would he say? The cop confirmed it. Someone really did try to murder me. She already knew. Instead, he dialed his assistant. "Mr. Vale?" Jessica sounded relieved. "Are you on your way back?" "Not yet. I'm catching a late flight. I need you to clear my calendar for the next 3 days." "All of it?" "All of it. Tell everyone I'm recovering from the accident." "Of course. Is there anything else you need?" "Did you get those service records from Dennis?" "He sent them over an hour ago. Everything looks normal. Full brake inspection 2 weeks ago. No issues noted." "Forward them to me." "Done." Adrian hung up. Normal. Of course the records looked normal. If Dennis was involved, he'd have made sure everything appeared legitimate. The taxi pulled up to the airport. Adrian paid the driver and headed inside, moving on autopilot through check-in and security. His mind was elsewhere, sifting through years of memories, searching for cracks he'd missed. Had Marcus always been this way? Had his father suspected him before finding the evidence? And why now? Why cut Adrian's brakes after nearly a decade of silence? The answer crystallized as Adrian boarded his flight. Because Adrian had been asking questions. Nothing overt, just routine due diligence on some of the company's older projects. But if Marcus was guilty, even routine questions would have set off alarms, which meant Adrian had already made himself a target without even knowing it. He buckled his seatbelt and leaned back, closing his eyes. The plane rumbled down the runway and lifted into the night. Somewhere below, Vivian was alone in her barn, surrounded by ghosts and evidence, waiting. And somewhere in New York, the men who'd killed his father were watching, waiting for Adrian to make a mistake. He wouldn't. Not this time. Adrian's penthouse was dark when he finally made it home at 2 a.m. The city sprawled below him, a grid of lights that never slept, never stopped wanting. He dropped his keys on the granite counter and stood there in the kitchen, still wearing his blood-stained shirt from the crash. The silence pressed against his eardrums. He pulled out his regular phone, 17 missed calls. 6 from his Uncle Marcus, 4 from Carl Patterson, 3 from Michael Torres. The rest were reporters who'd somehow already gotten wind of the accident. Adrian deleted the voicemails without listening to them. Instead, he opened his laptop and pulled up the service records Jessica had forwarded. Dennis Corbin's signature was right there at the bottom, certifying that the Mercedes had passed inspection with flying colors. Brake fluid levels normal. Hydraulic lines intact. No issues detected. 2 weeks ago, that report had been filed. Today, a state trooper had found a deliberately severed brake line. Adrian closed the laptop and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Manhattan glittered back at him, beautiful and indifferent. Somewhere down there, his daughter was asleep in his sister's guest room, dreaming kid dreams. Safe, for now. And somewhere up here, in one of these glass towers, someone was planning their next move. He pulled out the burner phone Vivian had given him. Her number stared back at him, anonymous and waiting. His thumb hovered over the call button. Then he put the phone away. 3 days, she'd said. 3 days to gather information, act normal, see who panicked. He could do that. He had to. The next morning, Adrian walked into Vail Holdings like nothing had changed. Same charcoal suit, same polished shoes, same expression of controlled focus that had become his default setting over the last decade. People looked up as he passed through the lobby, some with concern, others with curiosity. Jessica met him at the elevator, tablet in hand. "Mr. Vail, I wasn't expecting you today." "I'm fine, Jessica, just a few bruises." "The news said your car was totaled. The news exaggerates." Adrian stepped into the elevator. She followed. "What do I have this morning?" "You canceled everything, remember?" "Reinstate it. All of it." Jessica's fingers flew across her tablet. "Are you sure that's—" "I'm sure." The elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor. Vail Holdings occupied the top 6 floors of the building, a cathedral of glass and steel that Richard Vail had built from nothing. Adrian had grown up in these halls, learning to read balance sheets before he could read chapter books. Now every corner felt like a potential trap. He made it to his office without running into Marcus, small miracle, and shut the door. The view from up here was even better than from his penthouse. On clear days, you could see all the way to the Statue of Liberty. Today, the sky was gray and threatening rain. Adrian's desk phone buzzed. Jessica's voice came through the speaker. "Mr. Patterson is here to see you." Adrian's jaw tightened. Carl Patterson, CFO, one of the 4 names on his list. "Send him in." The door opened and Carl walked in, all 6'3" of him, silver hair immaculate as always. He'd been with Vail Holdings for 23 years, longer than Adrian had been alive when Carl started. Richard Vail had trusted him completely, which meant exactly nothing. "Adrian." Carl's handshake was firm, his expression genuinely worried. "I heard about the accident. Are you all right?" "I'm fine." "Your car is being handled." Adrian gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit. I need to talk to you about something." Carl sat, adjusting his cufflinks, a nervous habit Adrian had noticed years ago. "Of course. What's on your mind?" "I've been reviewing some of our older projects," Adrian said carefully. "Due diligence for a potential acquisition. I came across the Hartford development from 12 years ago." Carl's expression didn't change. "Hartford. That was before your time, wasn't it?" "By a few months, but I noticed some irregularities in the financial records. Settlement payments that don't quite match the reported costs. Irregularities? Carl leaned back, frowning. What kind of irregularities? The kind that suggests someone was moving money around to hide the real numbers. A pause. Carl's fingers drummed once against the armrest. Another tell. Adrian, that project was a nightmare from start to finish. The collapse, the lawsuits, the media circus. Your father handled most of it personally. If there are discrepancies in the records, it's probably just sloppy bookkeeping from a difficult time. My father wasn't sloppy. No, Carl agreed. But he was grieving. We all were. 6 men dead, families destroyed. It was chaos. Adrian watched him carefully. You're saying the records are wrong because everyone was too emotional to do their jobs properly? I'm saying mistakes happen, especially during a crisis. Pull the original files for me, everything from that project. I want to review them myself. Carl hesitated, just for a second, but Adrian caught it. Of course, though I should mention, most of those records are in deep storage. It might take a few days to retrieve them. That's fine. I'm not in a rush. Is there a specific reason you're looking into this now? Just being thorough, Adrian said. We're expanding into commercial development again. I want to make sure we don't repeat past mistakes. Carl nodded slowly. Smart. I'll have my team pull everything we have. Appreciate it. Carl stood to leave, then paused at the door. Adrian, can I ask you something? Go ahead. This accident yesterday. The police told me your brake line was cut. Adrian kept his face neutral. That's what they think, yes. Any idea who would do something like that? No. Do you? Carl's eyes narrowed slightly. Why would I? You tell me. The air in the room shifted. Carl studied Adrian for a long moment, and Adrian could see the gears turning behind those careful eyes, calculations being made, risks being assessed. Be careful, Adrian, Carl said finally. Your father started asking questions like this once. It didn't end well for him. Is that a threat? It's a warning from someone who cared about Richard and cares about you. Some stones are better left unturned. Carl left before Adrian could respond. Adrian sat very still, pulse hammering in his ears. That hadn't been the reaction of an innocent man. That had been a warning, plain and simple, which meant Carl either knew about the cover-up or suspected what Adrian was digging into. Either way, the clock was ticking. His office door burst open without a knock. Marcus Vale strode in, all expensive suit and practiced charm, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Adrian, thank Christ you're all right. I've been calling you since yesterday. I know. I've been busy. Busy? Your car was sabotaged. Someone tried to kill you. Marcus shut the door behind him and crossed to the desk. This isn't something you brush off. I'm handling it. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're pretending everything's fine when you should be locked in a safe house with armed security. Adrian met his uncle's gaze. Who do you think cut my brakes, Marcus? How the hell should I know? You've made plenty of enemies over the years. Hostile takeovers aren't exactly a popularity contest. True, but this feels personal. Personal how? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Marcus pulled out this chair Carl had vacated and sat down heavily. Up close, Adrian could see the tension in his uncle's jaw, the slight tremor in his hands. Stress, maybe, or guilt. I'm worried about you, Marcus said. Ever since you started this push into commercial development, you've been different, distant, like you're looking for something. Maybe I am. What? The truth about what happened to my father. Marcus went very still. What are you talking about? His heart attack, how convenient it was. How sudden. Adrian, you were there that night. You found him in his office. Just the two of you. Are you seriously suggesting I had something to do with Richard's death? Marcus's voice rose. He was my brother. I loved him. Did you? Marcus stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to listen to this. You're obviously still shaken from the accident. Get some rest. Take a few days off. We'll talk when you're thinking clearly. I'm thinking very clearly, Adrian said. Clearer than I have in years. Marcus stared at him for a long moment. Then he shook his head. Your father would be ashamed of you right now, turning on family, making wild accusations. My father kept secrets, big ones, and I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But I know this. You keep going down this path, you're going to destroy everything Richard built. Is that what you want? To burn down his legacy? Maybe his legacy deserves to burn. The words hung between them like a grenade. Marcus's expression hardened. Be very careful, Adrian. You're not the only one with a stake in this company. You start making reckless moves, the board will remove you, family or not. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Marcus left, slamming the door behind him. Adrian exhaled slowly. 2 confrontations down, 2 more to go. But first, he needed to think. He grabbed his coat and took the elevator down to street level. Outside, the threatened rain had started to fall, cold and steady. Adrian walked without direction, letting the city swallow him. His phone buzzed, the burner. He ducked into a Starbucks and pulled it out. A text from Vivian. How's it going? Adrian typed back, poked the hornet's nest. They're rattled. Good. Keep pushing. I'm following a lead on Dennis Corbin. What kind of lead? The kind that suggests he's been getting paid by someone outside Vail Holdings. Large deposits, irregular intervals. I'll know more soon. Adrian stared at the message. Dennis had worked for the company for 6 years. Loyal, competent, never raised a red flag. And now this. He typed, be careful. Her response came immediately. You too. Adrian pocketed the phone and ordered a coffee he didn't want. While he waited, he thought about Carl's warning. Some stones are better left unturned, and Marcus's anger, which had felt less like righteous indignation and more like cornered desperation. They were scared, which meant he was close to something. His regular phone rang. Jessica. Sir, you have a visitor. She says it's urgent. Who? A Dr. Sarah Chen. She says she knew your father. Adrian's pulse quickened. Send her up. 10 minutes later, Adrian was back in his office, facing a woman in her mid-50s with sharp eyes and graying hair pulled into a practical bun. She wore a hospital ID badge, Mount Sinai Medical Center, and carried a worn leather briefcase. Mr. Vail, thank you for seeing me. Jessica said you knew my father. I did. I was his cardiologist for the last 3 years of his life. Dr. Chen sat down without being invited. I heard about your accident. I needed to see you. Why? Dr. Chen opened her briefcase and pulled out a file. Because 9 years ago, I told the police something was wrong with your father's death. They ignored me. I'm hoping you won't. Adrian leaned forward. I'm listening. Your father died of a heart attack. That's what the death certificate says. And technically it's true. His heart stopped. But the circumstances were unusual. Unusual how? Your father had a mild arrhythmia, nothing life-threatening. I had him on a beta blocker and monitored him regularly. His heart was stable. Good even, for a man his age. Dr. Chen flipped open the file. The night he died, he called me. Around 8 p.m., said he was experiencing chest pains. I told him to go to the emergency room immediately. He said he would. But he didn't. No. According to the police report, he was found dead in his office at 11 p.m. No call to 911. No attempt to get help. Just dead. Maybe he didn't make it to his phone in time. That's what everyone assumed. But here's the thing. Your father was a careful man, methodical. If he was having a cardiac event, he would have had his assistant call an ambulance. He wouldn't have just sat there waiting to die. Adrian's throat felt tight. What are you saying? I'm saying someone made sure he didn't get help, and I'm saying the toxicology report the medical examiner filed was incomplete. Incomplete? Dr. Chen pulled out another sheet. They tested for the standard panel: alcohol, common drugs. But they didn't test for certain cardiac medications that can induce arrhythmia if given in high doses, specifically digitalis. Why not? Because there was no reason to suspect foul play. The man had a heart condition. He died of a heart attack. Case closed. Dr. Chen leaned forward. But I kept a sample of his blood. Hospital protocol requires us to store specimens for 90 days. I held on to your father's for 2 years against policy, and I had it tested privately. Adrian's hands were shaking. What did you find? Digitalis, enough to trigger a fatal arrhythmia in someone with his condition. And before you ask, no, I didn't prescribe it. I checked his entire medication history. He had no legitimate reason to have that drug in his system. The room seemed to tilt. Why didn't you tell me this 9 years ago? I tried. I went to the police. They said I was mistaken, suggested the lab made an error. Then my supervisor at the hospital told me to drop it, said I was creating problems for a grieving family. Dr. Chen's voice hardened. A week later, someone broke into my apartment, took my laptop, my personal files, nothing else, just my research. Why are you coming forward now? Because I saw the news about your accident, and I thought, if they're coming after you, maybe you're finally asking the right questions, the ones your father died trying to answer. Adrian stood and walked to the window. Rain streaked down the glass. Below, people hurried through the streets, umbrellas bobbing like black mushrooms. None of them knew what he knew. None of them had to carry this weight. I need a copy of that toxicology report, he said. I figured. Dr. Chen pulled a folder from her briefcase and set it on the desk. It's all in there. The blood work, my notes, the timeline, everything. This could destroy your career. I'm 61 years old and planning to retire next year. My career can take the hit. Can you? Adrian turned to face her. I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice, Mr. Vale. The question is whether you're willing to pay the price. Dr. Chen stood and extended her hand. Adrian shook it. Be careful, she said. Whoever killed your father is still out there, and they've already tried to kill you once. I know. After she left, Adrian sat down and opened the folder. Page after page of medical jargon, chemical compounds, test results. But the conclusion was clear. Richard Vale had been murdered. His phone buzzed. Marcus, calling again. Adrian ignored it. Instead, he pulled out the burner and texted Vivian. We need to meet, tonight. Her response? Too risky. Stick to the plan. The plan just changed. I have new evidence. My father was poisoned. A longer pause this time. Then, where are you? My office. Get out, now. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Meet me at the place we first met. 2 hours. Adrian grabbed the folder and his coat. On his way out, Jessica looked up from her desk. Sir, where are you? Emergency. I'll be out the rest of the day. But your 3 o'clock will... Cancel it. Cancel everything. He didn't wait for her response. The rain had intensified by the time Adrian reached the parking garage. He'd called a car service rather than risk his own vehicle, assuming he even had a vehicle left that wasn't evidence in a criminal investigation. The black sedan was waiting. Adrian climbed in and gave the driver the address of a rental car place 20 blocks away. From there, he'd drive himself to Vermont. No electronic trail, no company records. The driver pulled into traffic. Adrian watched the city slide past, every pedestrian a potential threat, every car a possible tail. His phone rang, the regular one. Michael Torres this time. Adrian answered. Michael. Adrian, thank God, I've been trying to reach you. We need to talk about the Hartford project. Adrian's stomach dropped. What about it? Carl told me you've been asking questions. I need you to understand something. That project is radioactive. Legally, financially, every possible way. You start digging into it, you're going to open the company up to massive liability. Maybe the company deserves it. Jesus Christ, you sound just like your father. I'll take that as a compliment. It's not. Richard nearly destroyed this company with his crusade. If Marcus hadn't stepped in, Marcus stepped in. How? Michael hesitated. I've said too much. Look, just drop this, okay? For your own good. Can't do that. Then you're making a mistake. A big one. Michael hung up. Adrian stared at the phone. Marcus stepped in. What did that mean? Stopped Richard from going public? Convinced him to back down? Or something worse? The car pulled up to the rental place. Adrian paid in cash, signed the paperwork under a fake name, a trick his father had taught him years ago for situations requiring discretion, and drove north. The rain followed him all the way to Vermont. He reached the crash site just after dark. Vivian's Subaru was already there, parked where the old pickup truck had been. She was leaning against the hood, collar turned up against the rain. Adrian pulled in beside her and got out. You look like hell, she said. I feel worse. He handed her the folder. Read this. Vivian opened it, angling the pages to catch the light from her headlights. Her expression didn't change as she read, but her knuckles went white around the edges of the paper. Digitalis, she said finally. They poisoned him. And made it look like a heart attack. Your uncle? Has to be. He was the one who found the body. He would have had opportunity. Vivian closed the folder. This changes everything. With this and the evidence your father collected, we have enough to bring criminal charges. Not yet. We still don't know who else is involved. Who cut my brakes? Who's been paying off Dennis? I found out more about that, actually. Vivian pulled out her own phone and showed him a series of bank statements. Dennis has been receiving payments from a shell company called Meridian Consulting, $5,000 a month for the last 3 years. Who owns Meridian? That's the interesting part. It's buried under 6 layers of corporate entities, but I traced it back. Want to guess? Marcus. Close. Marcus and Carl Patterson, joint ownership. Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. Carl. The man his father had trusted with the company's finances. The man who'd warned Adrian to stop digging. So they're in it together, Adrian said. Marcus, Carl, and Dennis. Maybe Michael, too. Which means you can't go back to New York. The second you walk into that building, they'll know you're a threat. I have to go back. I have a daughter, a company. I can't just disappear. You can and you will, at least until we figure out our next move. Vivian gestured toward her car. Follow me. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. They drove deeper into the mountains, following roads that got progressively narrower and darker. Eventually, Vivian turned onto a dirt track that wound through dense forest. After a mile, they emerged into the clearing where her barn stood. Adrian had forgotten how peaceful it was here. No city lights, no noise, just rain and trees and the warm glow of Vivian's windows. They parked and went inside. Vivian immediately moved to the wood stove and started building a fire. Adrian stood dripping in the doorway, suddenly exhausted. You should get out of those wet clothes, Vivian said. There's a bedroom upstairs. I'll find you something dry. Adrian nodded numbly. He climbed the stairs to a small loft space with a bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the forest. Vivian appeared a moment later with a stack of clothes, flannel shirt, jeans, wool socks, men's clothes. Your husband's? Adrian asked quietly. Yeah. I can't. They're just clothes, Adrian. He would have wanted someone to use them. She left him alone to change. The clothes fit reasonably well. Thomas had apparently been about Adrian's size. The flannel smelled like cedar and thyme. When Adrian came back downstairs, Vivian had made tea and was sitting at her workbench. The toxicology report spread out in front of her. We need a plan, she said. I'm open to suggestions. We take everything we have. Your father's letter, the construction documents, the toxicology report, the financial records linking Marcus and Carl to Dennis, and we take it to the FBI. They'll bury it. Marcus has connections everywhere. Not everywhere. I know someone. A federal prosecutor in Boston. She's clean, ambitious. She'd kill for a case like this. Adrian sat down across from her. What's her name? Rachel Moreno. She worked with me years ago on a corporate fraud case. We stayed in touch. You trust her? As much as I trust anyone. Adrian nodded slowly. Okay, but we need more than documents. We need someone on the inside willing to testify. Who? Dennis. He's the weak link. Marcus and Carl are too smart, too insulated. But Dennis is just a guy taking bribes. Pressure him hard enough, he'll flip. How do we get to him? I have an idea, but it's risky. Vivian smiled faintly. Everything we're doing is risky. Fair point. They spent the next 2 hours planning. Adrian would call Dennis, claim he needed to meet urgently about the breaks. Somewhere public but quiet. A diner, maybe, or a park. Vivian would be nearby, recording everything. If Dennis admitted to tampering with the car, they'd have him. If he didn't, they'd confront him with the financial records and offer him a choice, cooperate or go down with Marcus and Carl. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was something. Around midnight, Vivian made up the couch for Adrian. He protested, said he'd sleep in the car, didn't want to impose. She told him to shut up and gave him a pillow. Adrian lay awake for a long time, listening to the rain on the roof and the pop of logs in the wood stove. Somewhere above him, Vivian moved around in the loft bedroom she'd offered him before taking the smaller room for herself. He thought about his daughter, about Emma's laugh, the way she drew horses in the margins of her homework, the fierce hug she'd given him the last time he'd dropped her off at Caroline's. He'd built his entire life around protecting her, keeping her safe. making sure she never had to worry about money or security or the things that had haunted his own childhood after his mother died. But what kind of protection was it really if it was built on blood and lies? Adrian closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, they'd start dismantling his father's empire. And he'd either destroy his family's legacy or finally give it the ending it deserved. Adrian woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Vivian moving around downstairs. For a disorienting moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then it came back. The barn, the rain, the plan they'd hatched in the small hours of the morning. He sat up, every muscle stiff from sleeping on a couch that was 6 inches too short for his frame. Gray light filtered through the windows. The rain had stopped, leaving everything outside wet and gleaming. When he came downstairs, Vivian was at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee into 2 mismatched mugs. She'd changed into fresh clothes, dark jeans and a thick sweater, and her hair was still damp from a shower. "You snore," she said without looking up. "I don't snore." "You absolutely snore, like a chainsaw with a drinking problem." Adrian took the coffee she offered. It was strong enough to strip paint. "Thanks for the hospitality. Don't mention it." Vivian leaned against the counter, studying him. "You ready for this?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." "Good answer." They spent the morning going over the plan again, tightening the details, anticipating what could go wrong. Adrian would call Dennis from a clean phone, request a meeting somewhere neutral. A coffee shop in Burlington, maybe. Busy enough that Dennis wouldn't try anything violent, quiet enough for a real conversation. Vivian would be there too, posing as just another customer, recording everything on her phone. Around 11, Adrian made the call. Dennis picked up on the 3rd ring. "Mr. Vale? I heard you were in an accident. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Dennis. That's actually what I need to talk to you about. Can you meet me today?" A pause. "Of course. When and where?" "There's a coffee place on Church Street, the Daily Grind. You know it?" "I can find it. 2 o'clock. And Dennis? Come alone." "Sir, is everything—" Adrian hung up. Vivian was watching him from across the room. "How did he sound?" "Nervous?" "Good. Nervous people make mistakes." They drove to Burlington separately, Vivian in her Subaru, Adrian in the rental sedan. The city was small by New York standards, more like a college town than a real metropolis. The Church Street Marketplace was a pedestrian mall lined with shops and cafes, crowded even on a weekday afternoon. Adrian found parking and walked to the Daily Grind. It was one of those aggressively local places, exposed brick, mismatched furniture, baristas with sleeve tattoos. He ordered a black coffee and claimed a table near the back with a clear view of the entrance. Vivian arrived 10 minutes later. She didn't acknowledge him, just ordered her own drink and sat at a different table with a book. To anyone watching, they were strangers. Dennis showed up at 2 on the dot. He looked worse than Adrian had ever seen him. Rumpled shirt, circles under his eyes, the kind of exhaustion that came from not sleeping. He spotted Adrian and made his way to the table. "Mr. Vale?" "Sit down, Dennis." Dennis sat. His hands were shaking slightly. "What's this about?" "My brakes. I heard what happened. The police contacted me. I told them everything checked out during the last service." "I know what you told them. I want to know what really happened." Dennis's face went pale. "I don't know what you mean." "Someone cut my brake line, Dennis. Someone with access to my vehicle. Someone who knew exactly when and where I'd be driving." "That's crazy. Why would I—" "Because you've been getting paid to." Adrian pulled out his phone and showed Dennis the bank statements Vivian had found. $5,000 a month from Meridian Consulting. That's Marcus's company, isn't it? His and Carl Patterson's. Dennis stared at the screen. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. "How long have they been paying you?" Adrian asked quietly. This isn't—" "How long, Dennis?" 3 years. The words came out in a whisper. 3 years. But I swear, I never thought they'd ask me to do something like this. I thought it was just keeping an eye on you, reporting back on your schedule, your meetings, corporate espionage type stuff. And cutting my brakes? Was that corporate espionage? Dennis put his head in his hands. I didn't want to do it. I told Marcus it was too far, but he said if I didn't, they'd make sure I went down for everything. All the little things I'd done over the years, falsifying service records, redirecting company funds. He had evidence of all of it. "So you tried to kill me to save yourself. I didn't think you'd actually get hurt. The route they gave me, you were supposed to crash in a low-speed zone. Fender bender, maybe some whiplash. I didn't know you'd end up on a mountain road. Adrian felt something cold and sharp settle in his chest. Who else is involved? I don't know. Marcus gives the orders. I just follow them. What about Carl Patterson? Michael Torres? Dennis looked up, eyes red. Carl knows everything. He's the one who set up the payment system. Michael, I'm not sure. He might be clean, or he might just be better at hiding it. Across the room, Vivian was still reading her book, but Adrian could see the tension in her shoulders. She was getting all of this. What else have they had you do? Adrian asked. Nothing like this. Mostly just watching you, reporting when you started asking questions about old projects. They got real nervous when you pulled the Hartford files. Because my father was going to expose them. Dennis nodded miserably. Marcus told me your dad was trying to destroy the company. Said he'd gone crazy with guilt over some accident years ago. I believed him. I thought I was protecting Vail Holdings. You thought you were protecting your paycheck. Yeah. Dennis wiped his face. Yeah, you're right. I'm a coward. I always have been. Adrian leaned back. Part of him wanted to feel satisfaction. They had what they needed, a confession, proof of conspiracy. But mostly, he just felt tired. Here's what's going to happen, Adrian said. You're going to go to the FBI. You're going to tell them everything you just told me. Names, dates, payments, all of it. And in exchange, I'll make sure the prosecutor knows you cooperated. They'll kill me. They'll try to kill you either way. At least this way you have a chance. Dennis was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, I'll do it. But I need protection. Witness protection, immunity, something. I'll make the call. Adrian stood and walked out. Vivian followed a few seconds later. They met 2 blocks away in the parking garage where Adrian had left his car. You get it? He asked. Vivian held up her phone. Every word. Good. Let's go. They drove back to the barn in silence. Adrian's mind was already moving to the next step, contacting Rachel Moreno, the federal prosecutor Vivian had mentioned, getting Dennis into protective custody, building the case against Marcus and Carl. But underneath all of that was something else, a question he'd been avoiding since he first opened his father's letter. Why hadn't Richard just gone to the police himself? When they got back to the barn, Adrian asked Vivian that exact question. She was quiet for a moment, staring into the wood stove. I asked him the same thing once. He said he didn't trust the system, said he'd seen too many powerful men walk away from worse crimes. He wanted to make sure when he went public, the evidence was so overwhelming that no lawyer, no judge, no amount of money could make it disappear. So he kept digging. For 2 years. Every night after work, weekends, holidays. He became obsessed with it. I tried to tell him to slow down, be careful, but he wouldn't listen. And then someone poisoned him. Vivian nodded. I think Marcus found out what he was doing. Maybe Richard confronted him, gave him a chance to come clean, and Marcus made a choice. Adrian walked to the window. Outside, the forest was darkening as evening approached. I used to think I knew my uncle. We worked together for a decade. I trusted him. People are good at hiding who they really are, especially when there's money involved. How do you do it? Live with knowing what happened to your husband and not lose your mind? Vivian was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. I don't know that I did. For the first year after Thomas died, I was gone. Just completely hollowed out. I'd go to work, come home, sit in our apartment staring at nothing. Friends tried to help. My family tried to help. But I couldn't let them in. What changed? I stopped trying to make sense of it. Stopped asking why it happened, or whether I could have prevented it. I just accepted that the world is cruel and random, and the people we love can be taken from us for no good reason at all. She paused. And then your father showed up with his evidence and his guilt and his desperate need to make things right. And I thought, okay, maybe I can't bring Thomas back, but I can make sure the people who killed him don't get away with it. Is that what kept you going? Revenge? At first, yeah. But then it became something else. Justice, maybe. Or just the need to do something that mattered. Adrian turned to face her. I want to call my daughter. Your regular phone? No, I'll use yours. Vivian handed him her cell. Adrian dialed Caroline's number, heart pounding. His sister picked up immediately. Hello? Caroline, it's Adrian. Adrian, where the hell are you? Marcus called me 3 times today asking if I'd heard from you. He said you disappeared from the office. I'm fine. I just needed some time to think. How's Emma? She's good. Worried about you, but good. Do you want to talk to her? Please. A rustle, then his daughter's voice. Daddy? Hey, sweetheart. Are you okay? Aunt Caroline said you were in a car accident. I'm fine, baby. Just a little banged up. Nothing serious. When are you coming home? Adrian's throat tightened. Soon, I promise. I just have some work to finish first. You always have work to finish. I know, and I'm sorry. But this is important. When I'm done, I'm going to take some time off. Just you and me. We'll go wherever you want. Really? Really? Can we go to the beach? Absolutely. The beach sounds perfect. They talked for a few more minutes, Emma telling him about a drawing she'd made, a book she was reading, a game she'd played with Caroline's dog. Normal kid stuff. Beautiful, mundane, untouched by everything Adrian was dealing with. When they hung up, Adrian handed the phone back to Vivian. She sounds sweet, Vivian said. She is. She's the only good thing I've ever done. I doubt that's true. It feels true. Vivian made dinner, pasta with vegetables from her garden, bread she'd baked earlier in the week. They ate at the small table near the wood stove, not talking much. The silence was comfortable, though, the kind that came from shared purpose rather than awkwardness. After dinner, Vivian pulled out a laptop and opened an encrypted email program. I'm going to reach out to Rachel, let her know what we have. What if she's compromised? She's not. How can you be sure? Because Rachel Moreno is the most aggressively honest person I've ever met. She once turned down a job at a major firm because she found out they'd been cooking their billing hours. She's annoying as hell, actually, but she's clean. Vivian typed for a few minutes, then hit send. Done. Now we wait. How long? She's usually quick. A few hours, maybe. Adrian nodded. He should have felt relief. They were making progress, building the case, getting closer to bringing Marcus down. But all he felt was exhaustion. I'm going to get some air, he said. Outside, the night was clear and cold. Stars scattered across the sky like broken glass. Adrian walked to the edge of the clearing and stood there, hands in his pockets, breathing. He thought about his father, about the man Richard Vale had been, or the man Adrian had thought he was. Stern, focused, impossibly disciplined. He'd taught Adrian to read financial statements before teaching him to ride a bike, taught him to negotiate before teaching him to throw a baseball. But he'd also taught him something else, Adrian realized. He'd taught him that some things mattered more than money or power or legacy. That when you discovered something wrong, you didn't look away just because fixing it would be inconvenient. Richard Vale had died trying to do the right thing. Adrian wouldn't let that death be meaningless. Footsteps behind him, Vivian carrying 2 mugs of tea. You okay? She asked. No, but I will be. She handed him a mug. They stood side by side, looking at the stars. Can I ask you something? Adrian said. Sure. Why did you really stay here all these years? You said you were scared, but I don't think that's the whole truth. Vivian was quiet for a moment. After Thomas died, I couldn't stand being in places we'd been together. Our apartment, the restaurants we liked, even the city itself. Everything reminded me of him. So I ran, found this place, fixed it up, told myself I was building a new life. But I was really just hiding from the grief, from the guilt, from the fact that I'd failed to protect him. I thought if I could just disappear completely, maybe I could outrun the pain. Did it work? Not even a little bit. She smiled faintly. Turns out you can't outrun yourself. You just end up alone in the woods with all the same problems. So why'd you stay? Because eventually I realized the woods weren't a hiding place. They were just a place. And I could choose to let that be enough. Not happy exactly, but peaceful. Or at least quiet. Adrian nodded. He understood that more than he wanted to admit. After his wife died, he'd thrown himself into work with the same desperate energy. Telling himself he was building something for Emma, securing her future. But really, he'd just been running from the emptiness. You think we can actually do this? He asked. Take down Marcus and everyone involved? I think we have a shot, which is more than we had a week ago. And if we fail? Then we fail, but at least we tried. Vivian's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, read the screen, and smiled. Rachel responded. She wants to meet. Tomorrow. In Boston. Adrian felt something shift in his chest. Relief, maybe. Or just the acknowledgement that there was no turning back now. Okay, he said. Let's do it. They drove to Boston the next morning, leaving before dawn. Vivian had insisted they take her car, less traceable than Adrian's rental. They stopped once for gas and terrible coffee, then pushed on through Massachusetts as the sun climbed higher. Rachel Moreno's office was in the federal courthouse, a brutalist concrete structure that looked like it had been designed to intimidate. They went through security, surrendered their phones, and were escorted to a small conference room on the 4th floor. Rachel was already there reviewing documents. She looked up when they entered, late 30s, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, suit that probably cost a month's rent. Her eyes were sharp and skeptical. Vivian, it's been a while. Too long. Vivian made introductions. This is Adrian Vale. Rachel's eyebrows rose. The Adrian Vale? As in Vale Holdings? That's right. And you're here to turn over evidence against your own company? Against the people who killed my father and covered up a construction collapse that killed 6 men. Rachel gestured for them to sit. I'm listening. For the next 2 hours, they laid it all out. Adrian's father's letter, the toxicology report from Dr. Chen, the financial records linking Marcus and Carl to Dennis, the recorded confession from Dennis about cutting the brakes. Rachel listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. Her expression gave away nothing. When they finished, she sat back and tapped her pen against the table. This is substantial, but there are problems. What kind of problems? Adrian asked. For starters, the toxicology report. The blood sample was stored improperly and tested by a private lab. Any defense attorney worth their salt will get it thrown out. But it proves nothing legally, I believe you, but belief isn't evidence in a courtroom. Vivian leaned forward. What about Dennis's confession? That's stronger, especially if he's willing to testify. But he's a co-conspirator. Juries don't trust people trying to save their own skin. So what do you need? Adrian asked. Rachel tapped her pen again, thinking. More people. Dennis is a start, but he's small fish. I need someone higher up the chain, someone who can testify about the Hartford cover-up directly. Carl Patterson, Vivian said. Would he flip? Maybe, if he thought Marcus was going to throw him under the bus. Rachel nodded slowly. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'll bring Dennis in, get his formal statement, set him up with protection. Meanwhile, you two need to find a way to drive a wedge between Carl and Marcus. Make Carl think he's expendable. Once he's scared enough, we approach him with a deal. And if he doesn't take it, then we go after him too. But it'll be harder without an insider. Adrian stood and walked to the window. Below, Boston sprawled in all its historic glory, a city that had survived revolution and scandal and countless attempts to corrupt it. How do we make Carl turn on Marcus? He asked. Rachel smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. You're a businessman, Mr. Vale. I'm sure you'll think of something. They left the courthouse with a plan, or at least the outline of one. Rachel would handle Dennis. Adrian and Vivian would work on Carl. The problem was how. They found a diner near the waterfront and ordered lunch they didn't really want. Adrian pushed scrambled eggs around his plate, while Vivian drank coffee and stared at nothing. We need leverage, Adrian said finally. Carl's too smart to be blackmailed. Not blackmail, pressure. Make him think Marcus is about to cut him loose. How? Adrian thought about it. Carl had been with Vale Holdings for over 2 decades. He'd built his entire career there, made himself indispensable. But indispensable wasn't the same as irreplaceable. What if Marcus started moving money around without telling Carl? Adrian said slowly. Shifting assets, closing accounts, covering his tracks. Carl would panic. Exactly. He'd realize Marcus was preparing to disappear and leave him holding the bag. Can you actually move money without Carl knowing? I still have access to the company accounts. Not all of them, but enough to create the appearance of suspicious activity. Vivian nodded slowly. It's risky. If Marcus catches on before Carl does, he'll know you're coming for him. I know, but we're out of options. They finished their coffee and drove back to Vermont in silence. The sun was setting by the time they reached the barn, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Inside, Vivian started a fire while Adrian set up his laptop at the kitchen table. He logged into Vail Holdings' financial systems using credentials that were probably being monitored but would take time to trace. For the next 3 hours, he moved money. Not huge amounts. That would trigger too many alarms, but enough to create a pattern. Transfers from accounts Carl oversaw to offshore holdings Marcus controlled. Small, steady, deliberate. The kind of thing you'd do if you were preparing to run. Around midnight, Adrian closed the laptop. Done. Now what? Now we wait. Carl reviews the financial reports every morning. He'll see the transfers by noon tomorrow. And then? Then we see if he's as smart as I think he is. Vivian made up the couch again. Adrian protested less this time. He was too exhausted to argue, but sleep didn't come easily. He lay awake listening to the fire crackle, thinking about everything that could go wrong. Marcus could call his bluff. Carl could ignore the transfers. The FBI could decide the evidence wasn't strong enough. Or worse, someone could get hurt. Emma, Caroline, Vivian. The thought of Vivian getting pulled deeper into this made his chest tight. She'd already lost so much. She didn't deserve to lose anything else. Around 3 a.m, he heard footsteps on the stairs. Vivian appeared in her bathrobe, hair loose around her shoulders. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Too much on my mind." She sat down on the arm of the couch. "Want to talk about it?" "I keep thinking about what happens after all this. If we actually pull it off. If Marcus and Carl go to prison and the truth comes out." "What about it?" "Vail Holdings won't survive. The scandal will destroy it. Investors will pull out. Clients will run. Everything my father built, everything I've spent my entire adult life protecting, will be gone." "Is that what you want to protect? A company built on lies?" "No, but it's all I have. It's Emma's inheritance, her security." Vivian was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Emma doesn't need a billion-dollar company, Adrian. She needs a father who can look her in the eye and tell her he did the right thing. That won't pay for college." "You'll find another way. You're smart enough." Adrian laughed bitterly. "You have a lot of faith in me for someone who met me a few days ago." "I have faith in what you're doing. That's different." She stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I think your father would be proud of you." After she went back upstairs, Adrian lay in the darkness and thought about that. Would Richard Vail be proud? Or would he be furious that Adrian was throwing away everything he'd built? He'd never know. But he knew what Emma would think, and that, in the end, was what mattered. The next morning, Adrian's regular phone started ringing at 9 o'clock. Marcus. Then Carl. Then Marcus again. Adrian ignored all of it. By noon, Vivian's burner phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Carl. "We need to talk, alone, today." Adrian showed Vivian the message. He took the bait. "Where do you want to meet him?" "Somewhere public, somewhere Marcus won't follow." They chose a park in White River Junction, halfway between Vermont and where Carl would be driving from. Neutral ground. Adrian texted back, "Junction Park, 4 p.m. Come alone." The response came immediately. "I'll be there." "This is it," Vivian said. "If you can flip him." "I know." Adrian spent the next few hours preparing. What he'd say, what he'd offer, what lines he wouldn't cross. At 3:30, they drove to White River Junction. Vivian parked where she could see the meeting spot but wouldn't be noticed. Adrian walked to a bench near a playground and waited. Carl arrived at 4 on the dot. He looked even worse than Dennis had. Unshaven, rumpled, like he hadn't slept in days. He sat down heavily on the bench beside Adrian. "You're moving money," Carl said without preamble. "I know." "Marcus's accounts. Offshore holdings. Shell companies. You're making it look like he's running." "Am I?" Carl turned to face him. "Don't play games, Adrian. I've known you since you were a kid. I know when you're scheming." "Then you know why I'm doing it. You're trying to turn me against Marcus. I'm showing you what he's already done. Those transfers? I didn't create them. I just moved them where you'd see them." Carl's face went pale. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Check the dates. Some of those accounts were opened 6 months ago, long before I started asking questions." It was a lie, but it was a convincing one. Carl sat very still, Adrian could practically see the gears turning, calculating, assessing, realizing that everything he thought he knew might be wrong. "Why are you telling me this?" Carl asked finally. "Because I'm giving you a choice. You can go down with Marcus, or you can save yourself." By turning on him. By telling the truth. Carl laughed, a harsh, broken sound. The truth. Do you know what the truth will do? It'll destroy Vail Holdings. Hundreds of people will lose their jobs. Millions of dollars in value will evaporate. Your father's legacy will be— "My father's legacy is already destroyed," Adrian cut in. "Marcus saw to that when he poisoned him." Carl went very still. "Poisoned?" "Digitalis, enough to trigger a fatal arrhythmia. A cardiologist can prove it." That's insane. Marcus wouldn't what? Kill his own brother to protect a cover-up? The same cover-up you helped orchestrate? Carl stood abruptly. "I didn't orchestrate anything. I kept things quiet. That's my job. Financial compliance. Managing risk." 6 men died, Carl. My father died. How much risk were you managing? I didn't know about the poisoning. I swear, I didn't know. But you knew about Hartford. You knew about the buried safety reports. You knew my father was trying to expose it. Carl's shoulders slumped. Yes, I knew. Then help me finish what he started. If I do, I'll spend the rest of my life in prison. Maybe. Or maybe the prosecutor cuts you a deal. Reduce sentence in exchange for testimony. Either way, you'll be alive, which is more than you can say if Marcus decides you're a liability. Carl sat back down. He looked old suddenly, beaten. What do you want from me? He asked quietly. Everything. Documents, emails, recordings, if you have them, and your testimony in front of a grand jury. And in exchange, I'll make sure the prosecutor knows you cooperated, that you weren't the architect of this, just someone who got in too deep and couldn't find a way out. Carl was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. Okay, I'll do it, but I want immunity, full immunity. I can't promise that, but I'll try. Then I need some time, a week, to get my affairs in order, make sure my family's protected. You have 3 days. After that, I go to the FBI with or without you. Carl stood. He looked at Adrian one last time, and there was something like regret in his eyes. Your father was a good man, better than the rest of us. I'm sorry we failed him. Then he walked away. Adrian watched him go, heart pounding. He'd done it. Carl was going to flip. He pulled out the burner phone and texted Vivian. We got him. Her response came immediately. Good. Let's go home. Home. The word sat strange in Adrian's mind. He didn't have a home anymore, just a penthouse he barely lived in and a daughter he barely saw. But as he walked back to Vivian's car, watching her smile through the windshield, he thought maybe home wasn't a place. Maybe it was just wherever you finally stopped running. The call came at 6 in the morning, 2 days after Carl had agreed to cooperate. Adrian was already awake, staring at the ceiling of Vivian's loft bedroom while she slept in the smaller room downstairs. The burner phone buzzed on the nightstand, and he grabbed it before the second ring. Rachel Moreno's voice was clipped and urgent. We have a problem. Adrian sat up. What happened? Carl Patterson's dead. His body was found in his car about an hour ago. Single gunshot wound to the head. They're calling it a suicide. The room tilted. Adrian gripped the phone harder. It wasn't suicide. I know that, you know that, but the local police are already closing the case. Gun was registered to Patterson. Gunshot residue on his hands. Note on the dashboard. Everything clean and tidy. Marcus did this. Probably, but proving it is another story. Rachel paused. Where are you right now? Vermont. Stay there. Don't come back to New York. Don't go anywhere Marcus can find you. What about Emma? Your daughter's still with your sister, right? Yes. I'll have agents check on her, discreetly. But Adrian, you need to understand, we just lost our star witness. Without Carl, this case gets a lot harder. We still have Dennis. Dennis is a mechanic who took bribes. Carl was the CFO. There's a difference. Rachel's voice softened slightly. I'm not saying we can't win. I'm saying we need to be smarter, more careful. What do you want me to do? Let me work on getting a warrant for Marcus's financial records. In the meantime, you sit tight and stay invisible. If he killed Carl to silence him, You're next on the list." She hung up before Adrian could respond. He sat there in the gray dawn light, phone still pressed to his ear. Carl Patterson was dead. A man with a wife and 2 kids and a sailboat he'd named after his mother. A man who'd made terrible choices but had been trying, at the end, to do something right. Now he was gone. Adrian heard movement downstairs. Vivian's voice called up softly. "Everything okay?" He came down to find her at the stove, making coffee. She took one look at his face and put the pot down. "What happened?" "Carl's dead. They made it look like suicide." Vivian closed her eyes. "Damn it. Rachel says we need to stay here. Wait for her to get warrants." "How long?" "I don't know. Days, maybe." Vivian poured 2 cups of coffee and handed him one. Her hands were steady, but Adrian could see the tension in her jaw. "We're running out of time. The longer we wait, the more opportunity Marcus has to cover his tracks." "I know." "So what do we do?" Adrian stared into his coffee. What would his father do? Richard Vale had spent 2 years building his case, meticulous and patient, but patience had gotten him killed. "We go on the offensive," Adrian said. "Stop reacting and start attacking." "How?" "We call an emergency board meeting at Vale Holdings. Force Marcus to face me in front of witnesses." Vivian frowned. "That's insane. He'll have you killed the second you walk through that door." "Not if it's public. Not if the media's there. Rachel can have FBI agents in the building. We make it impossible for him to do anything without exposing himself." "And what exactly are you going to say at this board meeting?" "The truth. All of it. The Hartford cover-up, my father's murder, Carl's death. I'll present the evidence we have and force the board to choose sides. They'll side with Marcus. They always side with money. Maybe, but it'll be on record. And when the FBI comes calling, they won't be able to claim ignorance." Vivian set her mug down. "This is a terrible plan. You have a better one?" She didn't answer. Adrian pulled out his regular phone, the one he'd been avoiding, and turned it on. Immediately it started buzzing with notifications. Voicemails, texts, emails. Most from Marcus, some from board members, several from reporters. One message stood out. From Michael Torres, sent at midnight. "Adrian, whatever you're planning, stop. You're putting everyone at risk. Call me." Adrian deleted it and opened his email. He typed quickly, fingers flying across the screen. To Vale Holdings Board of Directors. Subject: Emergency meeting, tomorrow 10 a.m. Effective immediately, I am calling an emergency board meeting to address matters of corporate governance and fiduciary responsibility. Attendance is mandatory. This meeting will be recorded and open to authorized media. Topics include financial irregularities discovered in historical project accounts, questions regarding the death of CFO Carl Patterson, succession planning and leadership accountability. Failure to attend will be noted in official records. Adrian Vale, CEO, Vale Holdings. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Vivian read over his shoulder. "You're really doing this? Unless you can talk me out of it." "I can't, but I'm coming with you." "Vivian, don't even try. You're not walking into that building alone." Adrian wanted to argue, but he knew that expression. He'd seen it before. The set of her jaw, the steel in her eyes. Thomas Ashford must have known that look well. "Fine," he said, "but you stay in the lobby. If anything happens, I'll have already called Rachel and every news outlet in New York. Relax. I'm not an idiot." Adrian's phone rang. Marcus. He let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. "Adrian, what the hell is this about? An emergency board meeting? Open to media? Have you lost your mind? Call me back immediately. We need to discuss this before you do something you can't take back." Adrian saved the message. Evidence of consciousness of guilt, Rachel would call it. The panic in Marcus's voice was obvious. Good. Let him panic. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Vivian helped Adrian organize the evidence into a presentation. Clean, clear, impossible to misunderstand. Richard Vale's letter. Dr. Chen's toxicology report. The financial records linking Marcus to Dennis. The recording of Dennis's confession. They didn't have Carl's testimony anymore, but they had enough to raise serious questions. Enough to force an investigation. Around 7 that evening, Adrian called his sister. "Adrian, where have you been? Marcus has been... Is Emma okay?" She's fine. She's in the bath. Why? What's going on? Adrian chose his words carefully. I need you to do something for me. Tomorrow, don't let Emma go to school. Keep her inside. Lock the doors. Don't answer for anyone except me or the police. Caroline's voice went tight. You're scaring me. I'm handling something big, and I need to know Emma's safe while I do it. Is this about the company? It's about a lot of things. Just trust me, okay? One more day. After tomorrow, everything will be different. Adrian, I love you both. I'll call you tomorrow night. He hung up before she could ask more questions. Vivian was watching him from across the room. You should tell her the truth. And say what? Your uncle's a murderer and he might come after Emma to get to me? Maybe not in those words. She's safer not knowing. If Marcus thinks Caroline's clueless, he has no reason to involve her. You're assuming Marcus is thinking rationally. I'm assuming he's thinking strategically, which he always does. Adrian's phone buzzed again. This time it was Michael Torres, calling instead of texting. Adrian almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Michael. Adrian, thank God. Listen to me very carefully. Do not go to that board meeting tomorrow. Why not? Because Marcus knows you're coming. He's prepared for it. He's hired private security, ex-military guys, the kind who don't ask questions. He's telling everyone you've had a breakdown since the accident, that you're paranoid, delusional, dangerous. That's convenient. Adrian, I'm serious. You walk into that building tomorrow, you might not walk out. Are you threatening me, Michael? I'm trying to save your life. Whatever you think you know about Marcus, whatever evidence you think you have, it's not worth dying for. It was worth it to my father. A long silence. Then Michael said quietly, Richard was my friend. I respected him, but he was wrong to pursue this. Some fights you can't win. I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to do what's right. Those aren't the same thing. They are to me. Adrian hung up. Vivian had moved to the window, looking out at the darkening forest. He's right, you know. This could get you killed. I know. And you're doing it anyway. I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice, Adrian. That's what makes it meaningful. He crossed the room to stand beside her. Outside, the first stars were appearing in the clear sky. When you confronted the people who killed Thomas, what did you think would happen? I thought I'd probably die, but I thought maybe it would matter. Did it? I don't know. They destroyed my evidence and ran me off the road, so maybe not. But you tried. Yeah, I tried. She turned to face him. That's all we can ever do, right? Try. They stood there in the gathering darkness, two people who'd lost everything and somehow found each other in the wreckage. Adrian's phone lit up one more time. A text from an unknown number. Walk away while you still can. This is your last warning. He showed it to Vivian. Marcus? She asked. Probably. You going to listen? Adrian deleted the message. Not a chance. They left for New York before dawn, driving through the night in Vivian's Subaru. Adrian kept checking his mirrors, watching for tails, but the roads were empty. Just them and the darkness and the white lines disappearing under the tires. Somewhere around Albany, Vivian said, Tell me about Emma. What do you want to know? What's she like? Adrian smiled despite everything. Stubborn, creative, she draws constantly, horses mostly. Has this whole imaginary stable in her head with names for every horse. She wants to be a veterinarian. Like her dad? Single-minded? Worse. When she decides she wants something, there's no talking her out of it. Last year she decided she was going to learn piano. We don't even have a piano. She taught herself on a keyboard app on her iPad. She sounds amazing. She is. She's everything I'm not. Open, trusting, hopeful. Adrian's voice caught. I don't want her to lose that. I don't want her to grow up cynical and paranoid like me. You're not paranoid. You're careful. There's a difference. Is there? Yeah, paranoid is seeing threats that don't exist. Careful is acknowledging the ones that do. They drove in silence for a while. Then Vivian said, If this goes sideways tomorrow, it won't. But if it does, if something happens to you, I'll make sure Emma knows the truth about what you did, why you did it. Adrian's throat tightened. Thank you. And I'll make sure she knows her father was brave. Stupid, maybe, but brave. Can't I be both? Most brave people are. They reached Manhattan just after 9. The city was already awake, crowds pouring out of subway stations, taxis jamming the streets. Adrian directed Vivian to a parking garage 3 blocks from Vale Holdings. "You remember the plan?" he asked. "Stay in the lobby, record everything. If shooting starts, run." "That's not funny." "I'm not joking." They walked to the building together. Adrian was wearing the suit he'd packed, charcoal gray, conservative, the armor he wore to every important meeting. Vivian had dressed up too, trading her usual jeans for slacks and a blazer. The lobby of Vale Holdings was already crowded. Adrian spotted several board members arriving, along with reporters being held back by security. Someone had leaked the meeting. Good. Jessica was waiting by the elevators, tablet in hand, looking more stressed than Adrian had ever seen her. "Mr. Vale, I wasn't sure you'd actually show up." "Where's Marcus?" "Already upstairs. He's been here since 7. She lowered her voice. "Sir, security's been doubled. And there are men I don't recognize, not our usual people." "I know, it's fine." "It doesn't look fine." Adrian glanced at Vivian. "This is my attorney, Ms. Ashford. She'll be observing from the lobby." Jessica's eyebrows rose, but she didn't comment. "The boardroom is ready. Everyone's waiting." Adrian rode the elevator to the 42nd floor, heart hammering against his ribs. The doors opened and he stepped out into familiar territory, the executive floor he'd walked 1,000 times. But today it felt different, hostile. 2 men in dark suits flanked the boardroom entrance. Private security, like Michael had warned. They didn't move as Adrian approached, but their eyes tracked him like predators watching prey. Adrian pushed open the door. The boardroom was exactly as he remembered. Massive table, leather chairs, wall of windows overlooking the city. 12 board members were already seated, along with Marcus at the head of the table. His uncle looked calm, composed, even smiled as Adrian entered. "Adrian, good of you to join us." "Marcus." Adrian took the empty seat at the opposite end of the table, the CEO's chair, though Marcus had clearly been sitting in it before Adrian arrived. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Robert Chen, the longest-serving board member, cleared his throat. "Adrian, we're all concerned about you. This emergency meeting, the accusations you've been making, I haven't made any accusations yet. Your email implied serious irregularities, Carl Patterson's death, questions about Marcus's leadership." Robert's expression was sympathetic but firm. "These are serious claims that require serious evidence." "I have evidence." "Then let's see it." Adrian opened his laptop and connected it to the screen behind him. The first image appeared, his father's letter, enlarged so everyone could read it clearly. "This was written by my father 9 years ago, shortly before his death. In it, he details a conspiracy to cover up safety violations during the Hartford construction project. 6 men died in that collapse. My father discovered that executives at this company knew about the risks and chose to ignore them." Murmuring around the table, Marcus remained still, expression unreadable. Adrian clicked to the next slide. "These are the financial records showing settlement payments that don't match official reports. Someone moved money to hide the real cost of the cover-up." Another click. Dr. Chen's toxicology report. "This is evidence that my father was poisoned with digitalis the night he died. His death wasn't a heart attack. It was murder." The murmuring grew louder. Several board members were staring at Marcus now. Marcus finally spoke, his voice steady. "Adrian, I understand you've been through a trauma, your accident, the stress of running this company, but what you're suggesting is..." "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts." Adrian clicked again. Dennis's confession played on the speakers. Grainy audio, but clear enough. "My brakes were cut. Dennis Corbin, our fleet manager, was paid to do it through a shell company owned by Marcus and Carl Patterson." "This is insane," Marcus said, but his voice had lost some of its steadiness. "Is it? Then explain why Carl Patterson is dead, why he died right after agreeing to testify against you." "Carl killed himself. The police found what you wanted them to find, just like they found a convenient heart attack when you killed my father." Marcus stood abruptly. "That's enough. Adrian, you're clearly unwell. I'm calling a vote to remove you as CEO, effective immediately." "You don't have the authority." "I have the board's support, don't I?" Marcus looked around the table. Several members nodded, though some looked uncertain. Robert Chen stood. "I think we need to take a recess." Review this evidence properly before making any decisions. There's no time for that, Marcus snapped. Adrian is making wild accusations based on conspiracy theories and paranoid delusions. Every minute he remains in charge, he damages this company's reputation. Then you won't mind if the FBI reviews the same evidence, Adrian said calmly. The room went dead silent. What? Marcus's face had gone pale. Federal prosecutors already have copies of everything I just showed you. They're getting warrants as we speak, so you can vote me out if you want, but it won't stop what's coming. Marcus's carefully controlled expression cracked. Adrian saw rage there, and fear, and something feral. You stupid boy, Marcus said quietly. You have no idea what you've done. I've done what my father couldn't. I've exposed you. You've destroyed this company, destroyed your own future, your daughter's inheritance. Maybe, but at least I can look her in the eye. Marcus moved toward Adrian, and for a moment Adrian thought his uncle might actually attack him. But the boardroom door burst open. Rachel Moreno walked in, flanked by 4 FBI agents in windbreakers. Marcus Vail, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and securities fraud. Everything happened fast after that. Marcus tried to run, but the agents had him before he reached the door. They cuffed him while he shouted about lawyers and false arrest and Adrian's betrayal. Adrian watched it all with a strange detachment, like he was seeing it from far away. Rachel approached him as the agents led Marcus out. We got the warrants an hour ago. Your evidence was enough to convince a judge. We're also bringing in Michael Torres for questioning. Michael? He tried to warn me. Maybe. Or maybe he was trying to gauge what you knew. We'll find out. She left, and suddenly Adrian was alone in the boardroom with the stunned board members. Robert Chen spoke first. Adrian, we had no idea. I know. What happens now? Now we cooperate with the investigation. We open our books completely, and we figure out how to make this right with the families who were hurt. That could bankrupt the company. Then it goes bankrupt. Some things matter more than money. Adrian left the boardroom and took the elevator down. His legs felt shaky, like he'd run a marathon. In the lobby, Vivian was waiting, phone in hand, watching everything through the glass doors. When she saw him, relief flooded her face. You're okay. I'm okay. Is it over? I don't know, maybe. They walked out into the sunlight together. Outside, news crews were swarming, cameras already rolling. Adrian saw Marcus being led into a federal vehicle, still shouting. Someone shoved a microphone in Adrian's face. Mr. Vail, can you comment on your uncle's arrest? No comment. Is it true Vail Holdings was covering up manslaughter? There will be a full statement later. Right now, I need to see my daughter. Vivian guided him through the crowd to where her car was parked. They got in and she drove, not asking where they were going, just getting them away. Adrian called Caroline. Adrian, I've been watching the news. What the hell is happening? I'll explain everything. Is Emma there? Yes, she's right here. Put her on. A moment later, his daughter's voice. Daddy? Hey, sweetheart. Are you okay? Aunt Caroline said you were on TV. I'm fine, baby. Everything's going to be fine. I'm coming to get you, okay? We're going to take that beach trip I promised. Really? Really? Pack your stuff. I'll be there in an hour. He hung up and leaned back against the seat. His hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. Vivian glanced at him. You did it. We did it. So what now? Adrian thought about that. Vail Holdings would probably collapse. His fortune would evaporate in lawsuits and settlements. His name would be attached to one of the biggest corporate scandals in years. But his father's killers were in custody. The truth was finally out, and he could look his daughter in the eye. Now, he said, I figure out who I am when I'm not trying to protect a lie. Vivian smiled. That sounds like a good place to start. They drove to Connecticut in comfortable silence. Outside the windows, the world kept spinning, indifferent and beautiful. And for the first time in years, Adrian wasn't afraid of what came next. Emma was waiting on Caroline's front steps when they pulled up, a pink backpack clutched in both hands, and her hair pulled into 2 uneven pigtails she'd clearly done herself. The second the car stopped, she bolted down the walkway. Adrian barely got the door open before she crashed into him. Daddy! He caught her, lifting her up even though she was getting too big for it, and held on tight. She smelled like Caroline's lavender detergent and strawberry shampoo and everything good in the world. "Hey, baby girl, you were on the news. Everyone was yelling and there were police and Aunt Caroline wouldn't let me watch, but I saw it anyway on her iPad." "I know. I'm sorry you had to see that." Emma pulled back to look at him, her small hands on his cheeks. "Are you in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. I'm not in trouble. I did something I needed to do. Something important." "Was it about Grandpa?" Adrian's throat tightened. He told Emma stories about Richard Vale, carefully edited versions that emphasized the good parts. She'd been too young when he died to remember him. "Yeah, it was about Grandpa." Caroline appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, expression somewhere between furious and relieved. "Adrian. Caroline. Inside. Now." Vivian had stayed in the car, giving them space. Adrian set Emma down and followed his sister into the house. She closed the door and turned on him. "What the hell was that? Marcus arrested? Corporate cover-ups? Murder? I had to hear about it from CNN." "I couldn't tell you. It wasn't safe." "Not safe? Adrian, we're family. You should have—" "Marcus tried to kill me, Caroline. He murdered our father. If he'd known you were involved, even tangentially, he would have used you against me. Or worse." That stopped her, the anger drained from her face, replaced by something pale and shaken. "Marcus killed Dad?" "Poisoned him. Made it look like a heart attack." Caroline sat down heavily on the couch. "I can't." "Why?" "Because Dad was going to expose a cover-up that would have destroyed the company. Marcus chose money over family." "But Dad was his brother." "I know." Caroline stared at nothing for a long moment. Then she looked up at Adrian. "What's going to happen now? Trials? Investigations? The company will probably collapse. Our family name will be dragged through every newspaper in the country. And Emma? Emma will be fine. I'll make sure of it." "How?" "If the company goes under, if the money's gone, then we'll figure it out. I've got some savings they can't touch. Enough to take care of her. And honestly," Adrian sat down beside his sister, "maybe it's better this way. I've spent her whole life chasing the same thing Dad chased. Power, legacy, proving something. And look where it got us." Caroline's eyes were wet. "I always thought Dad died because he worked too hard. That he just burned out. He died because he tried to do the right thing. And I'm going to make sure that meant something." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Caroline said, "Who's the woman in the car?" "Her name's Vivian. She helped me figure all this out. Her husband died in the collapse Dad was investigating." "And you two are—" "I don't know what we are. Friends, maybe." Caroline gave him a look that said she didn't believe that for a second, but she didn't push. "Are you really taking Emma to the beach?" "Yeah, we both need some time away from all this." "She'll love that. She's been talking about the ocean non-stop since you mentioned it." Adrian found Emma in the backyard drawing with chalk on the patio. She'd made an elaborate scene. Horses, obviously, along with what might have been a castle, or possibly a barn. "That's beautiful, Em." "It's a stable, see? Each horse has their own stall, and there's a training ring and everything." "Incredible. You ready to go to the beach?" "Right now?" "Right now." She jumped up, abandoning the chalk. "Can we build sandcastles?" "As many as you want." "And swim?" "If the water's not too cold." "Can your friend come?" Adrian glanced back at the car where Vivian was still waiting. "Would you want her to?" Emma shrugged. "She looks nice, and you smile different when you look at her." "I do?" "Yeah, like how Aunt Caroline smiles at her boyfriend, the dopey kind." Adrian laughed despite everything. "I don't smile dopey." "You totally do." They said goodbye to Caroline, who hugged them both so hard Adrian thought his ribs might crack. Then they walked to the car. Adrian opened the back door for Emma. "Em, this is Vivian." "Vivian, my daughter Emma." Vivian turned in her seat, smiling. "Hi, Emma." "Hi, Daddy says we're going to the beach. Do you want to come?" Vivian glanced at Adrian. He could see the question in her eyes. Was this okay? Was he sure? He nodded. "I'd love to," Vivian said. "But I should warn you, I'm terrible at building sandcastles. They always collapse." "That's okay. Daddy's not very good either. We can teach you." They drove south, away from the city and the news cameras and the weight of everything that had happened. Emma chattered from the back seat about horses and beach plans and a book she was reading about dolphins. Vivian engaged with her easily, asking questions, laughing at Emma's jokes. Adrian watched them in the rearview mirror and felt something unknot in his chest. They stopped at a hotel in a small coastal town where nobody recognized Adrian's face from the news. The manager gave them adjoining rooms without comment. Adrian took Emma to one, Vivian took the other. The beach was a 10-minute walk. They arrived just as the sun was starting to dip toward the horizon, turning the water gold and orange. Emma kicked off her shoes immediately and ran toward the waves. "Careful," Adrian called, but she was already ankle-deep, squealing at the cold. Vivian stood beside him, hands in her pockets. "She's great." "She is. Looks like you." "Acts like her mother. Fearless." They walked down to where Emma was collecting shells, examining each one with serious concentration before deciding whether it was worthy of her bucket. "Daddy, look at this one. It's purple." Adrian crouched down to admire it. "That's a good find. I'm going to keep it forever." "Forever's a long time." "I know, but it's special." She ran off to find more treasures. Vivian sat down in the sand, and Adrian joined her. They watched Emma dart back and forth along the waterline, completely absorbed in her search. "What happens next?" Vivian asked. "After the beach." "I don't know. The FBI will want more testimony. There will be depositions, probably a trial. Vail Holdings will have to restructure or liquidate." "And you?" "I'll figure it out. Find something else to do. Maybe something that doesn't involve lying to myself about what I'm building." Vivian nodded. "I've been thinking about that too. About what comes after." "After what?" "After hiding. I spent 7 years in those woods telling myself I was healing, but really I was just waiting. For what? I don't even know. Permission to live again, maybe. And now? Now I think maybe I'm done waiting." They sat in silence for a while. Emma had moved further down the beach, still collecting shells. "Can I ask you something?" Adrian said. "Sure." "Why did you really stage that crash? You could have just shown up at my office with the letter. Why the elaborate setup?" Vivian smiled faintly. "Because I needed to know if you were like your father or like Marcus. If you'd run from the truth or face it. A letter in an office wouldn't have told me that, but how you reacted when everything went wrong. That told me everything." "And what did it tell you?" "That you're stubborn and suspicious and you don't trust easily. But when you commit to something, you see it through." She glanced at him. "Like your father." "He got himself killed. He died trying to do the right thing. There are worse ways to go." Adrian thought about that. His father had spent 2 years building his case, knowing it could cost him everything. And he'd done it anyway because he believed some things mattered more than safety or comfort or even survival. Maybe Richard Vail hadn't been the cold, distant man Adrian remembered. Maybe he'd just been someone who understood that real courage meant being willing to lose. Emma came running back, bucket full of shells and sea glass. "Look how many I found!" "That's quite a haul," Vivian said. "Do you want one?" "You can pick any one you want." Vivian looked genuinely touched. "Really?" "Yeah, as a present." Vivian examined the collection carefully and selected a small piece of green sea glass, worn smooth by the ocean. "This one's perfect. Thank you, Emma." "You're welcome. Are you going to stay with us?" The question hung in the air. Adrian and Vivian exchanged a glance. "For a little while," Vivian said carefully. "If that's okay with your dad." "It's okay with me," Emma announced. "I like you. You're not boring like most adults." Vivian laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." They stayed on the beach until the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and purple. Emma insisted on one more search for shells, racing the darkness. Adrian and Vivian walked behind her, close enough to talk quietly. "I need to go back to Vermont eventually," Vivian said. "Deal with the barn. Figure out what I'm doing with my life." "You thinking about selling it?" "Maybe. Or maybe just opening it up a little. Stop hiding." "What would you do instead?" "I've been thinking about that foundation idea, the one you mentioned at the board meeting, for the families affected by corporate negligence. Someone should probably run that." Adrian stopped walking. "You're serious." "Why not? I spent 10 years as a corporate attorney. I know how these companies operate, how they hide their tracks, and I've got personal experience with what it's like to be on the other side." "It would mean working together." Is that a problem? Adrian looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who'd crashed into his life and blown it apart, and somehow made him better for it. The woman who'd lost everything and rebuilt herself in the quiet of the Vermont woods. The woman who'd risked her safety to help a stranger seek justice for a father who'd tried to save her husband. No, he said. It's not a problem. Emma ran back to them, out of breath and happy. I'm hungry. Can we get pizza? Sure, baby. Let's find pizza. They walked back to town as the streetlights flickered on. The pizza place was crowded and loud, but they found a booth in the corner. Emma ordered pepperoni and proceeded to tell Vivian the entire plot of the dolphin book she was reading, complete with sound effects. Adrian watched them talk and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not happiness, exactly. That seemed too simple. But maybe contentment, or just the absence of the constant fear and calculation that had defined his life for so long. His phone buzzed. Rachel Moreno. I need to take this, he told Vivian. He stepped outside into the cool evening air. Rachel? Adrian? Quick update. Marcus is refusing to cooperate, no surprise there. But we got Michael Torres to flip. Turns out he wasn't part of the original cover-up, but he knew about it and stayed quiet. He's willing to testify in exchange for immunity on the obstruction charges. What about Dennis? Already in protective custody. He's solid. Between him, Michael, and the documentary evidence, we have a strong case. When's the trial? Probably a year out. These things take time. But Adrian, you should know. The media is going to be all over this. Your life won't be private for a while. I figured. There's something else. The families from the Hartford collapse. Some of them have reached out through their lawyers. They want to meet with you. Adrian's chest tightened. What do they want? Some want answers, some want apologies. Some probably want money. But I think mostly they just want acknowledgement. They've been told for 12 years that what happened was an accident, that no one was at fault. You're giving them something different. I'll meet with them, all of them, whatever they need. I'll set it up. And Adrian, what you did took guts. Not everyone would have burned down their own empire for the truth. It wasn't my empire. It was built on lies. I just tore down what should have never existed. He hung up and went back inside. Emma had somehow gotten chocolate sauce on her nose. Vivian was trying to wipe it off while Emma protested. Everything okay? Vivian asked. Yeah, just the prosecutor. The case is moving forward. Good. They finished dinner and walked back to the hotel. Emma was yawning by the time they reached the room. Adrian got her ready for bed while Vivian waited in the adjoining room. Daddy? Emma said as he tucked her in. Yeah, baby? Are we going to be poor now? Adrian sat on the edge of the bed. What makes you ask that? I heard Aunt Caroline talking. She said the company might go away and we'd lose everything. The company might go away, but we won't lose everything. We'll still have each other. And that's the most important thing. Will I still be able to draw? Of course. And go to school? Yes. And see you? Adrian's throat tightened. You'll see me more than you ever have. I'm going to stop working so much, spend more time with you. Really? Really. I promise. Emma thought about that. Okay, then I don't care about being poor. We're not going to be poor, Em. Just less rich. There's a difference. Less rich sounds fine. She yawned again. Adrian kissed her forehead and turned off the light. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her settle into sleep with the easy confidence of someone who trusted the world to be there in the morning. He found Vivian on her room's balcony, looking out at the ocean. The moon was up now, casting silver light across the water. She asleep? Vivian asked. Out like a light. Adrian joined her at the railing. She asked if we're going to be poor. What'd you tell her? That we'll be fine. And we will be. I've got enough set aside to take care of her. Make sure she can go to college, have opportunities. Won't be billions, but it'll be enough. Enough is underrated. It is. They stood in comfortable silence, listening to the distant sound of waves. I've been thinking about Thomas, Vivian said quietly, about what he'd think of all this. Me helping you, testifying, bringing it all back up. And? I think he'd be proud. He was always big on doing the right thing, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. She smiled. He would have liked you, actually. You're both stubborn in the same infuriating way. I'll take that as a compliment. You should. Adrian turned to face her. Vivian, I need to say something. Okay. A week ago, I was running on autopilot, doing the same thing I'd done for 10 years, telling myself it mattered, that I was building something. But really, I was just afraid. Afraid of slowing down, afraid of looking too close at what I'd become, afraid of admitting that maybe my father's death wasn't random bad luck. And now? Now I'm still afraid. But I'm afraid of different things. I'm afraid of letting Emma down, afraid of not doing enough to help the families who got hurt, afraid of, he paused, afraid of losing whatever this is. This? You, us, whatever we're becoming. Vivian was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I'm afraid too. I spent 7 years protecting myself from feeling anything for anyone. It was safer that way, simpler. And now? Now I think maybe I'm tired of safe and simple. She looked at him. Thomas has been gone for 12 years. And I've been gone almost as long, just in a different way. Maybe it's time to come back. Adrian reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. I don't know what comes next, he said. I don't have a plan or a strategy or any idea how this is supposed to work. Good. Plans are overrated. Says the woman who staged an elaborate car crash to test my character. That was different. That was necessary chaos. This is just chaos. And you're okay with that? Yeah, I think I am. They stood there on the balcony, two broken people who'd found each other in the wreckage. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt the need to fill the silence with plans or promises or certainty about the future. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange blur. Adrian met with the families from Hartford, sitting across from grieving widows and grown children who'd lost their fathers. He apologized for his company's actions, for his father's failure to act sooner, for the years they'd spent believing it was just an accident. Some of them were angry, some cried, some just wanted to understand why. Adrian told them the truth and promised that every cent left in Vail Holdings would go toward making things right. He set up the foundation, naming it after Thomas Ashford and the 5 other men who died that day. Vivian helped him navigate the legal complexities, translating corporate speak into plain English, cutting through the layers of bureaucracy that companies use to protect themselves from accountability. Rachel Moreno kept them updated on the case. Marcus was fighting the charges, hiring expensive lawyers and claiming Adrian had fabricated everything out of some Freudian need to destroy his father's legacy. But the evidence was overwhelming. The trial would go forward. Vail Holdings collapsed exactly as Adrian predicted. The board voted to dissolve the company, liquidating assets to pay settlements and legal fees. Adrian's personal fortune evaporated in the process, though he'd protected enough in separate accounts to provide for Emma. The media circus was brutal. Cable news ran segments about corporate corruption and family betrayal. Reporters camped outside Adrian's apartment until he finally moved out, putting his furniture in storage and moving into a smaller place where no one would find him. Emma handled it better than he expected. She changed schools to avoid the other kids' questions, but she adapted quickly, made new friends, kept drawing her horses. Caroline called every few days to check on them, still processing the revelation about their father's death. She'd started therapy, she told Adrian, trying to make sense of it all. I keep thinking about all the times Marcus came to family dinners, she said during one call. How normal he seemed, how he'd ask about Emma and pretend to care. I know. How do you live with that? Knowing someone you trusted was lying the whole time. You just do, and you try to be better at seeing people clearly. Is that even possible? I don't know, but I'm trying. 6 weeks after Marcus's arrest, Adrian and Emma moved to Vermont. It wasn't a decision he'd consciously made so much as something that happened organically. They'd visited Vivian at the barn, and Emma had fallen in love with the forest and the quiet and the way you could see every star at night. She'd asked if they could stay longer, then longer again. Eventually, Adrian realized he didn't want to leave. Vivian's barn had enough room for all of them. They converted the loft into Emma's bedroom, filling it with her drawings and books and the shell collection from the beach. Adrian took the smaller room downstairs. Vivian kept her space. They didn't talk about what it meant, the 3 of them living together. They just fell into a rhythm. Adrian spent his days working on the foundation, reaching out to other families who'd been hurt by corporate negligence, building a network of support and legal resources. Vivian handled the legal side, using her contacts from her old attorney days. Emma went to the local school, a small building with 3 classrooms and a teacher who let her draw during math class as long as she did the problems afterward. And slowly, quietly, they built something that looked like a life. One evening in late October, Adrian was splitting wood behind the barn when Vivian came out with 2 mugs of cider. "Emma's doing homework," she said, "or what she claims is homework. Pretty sure she's actually drawing horses." Adrian smiled and took one of the mugs. "She gets the work done eventually." "True." They sat on the woodpile, watching the sun set through the trees. The forest was a riot of color, reds and oranges and yellows, all competing for attention. "You ever miss it?" Vivian asked. "The city, the company, the power?" "Sometimes. But then I remember what it cost, who I had to be to maintain it." "And who are you now?" Adrian thought about that. "I don't know yet, still figuring it out." "That's okay. You've got time." "Do I? I'm 32. Most people have themselves figured out by now." "Most people are lying. We're all just making it up as we go." Adrian laughed. "That's comforting." "Isn't it?" Emma appeared in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Can we go see the horses?" There was a small stable about 2 miles down the road, run by an older woman who'd let Emma volunteer on weekends. Emma had become obsessed with one horse in particular, a gray mare named Stella. "It's almost dark," Adrian said. "Please? Just for a few minutes?" Adrian looked at Vivian. She shrugged. "I'm game if you are." They walked down the dirt road in the gathering dusk, Emma running ahead and circling back like an excited puppy. The stable was quiet when they arrived, most of the horses already in their stalls for the night. Emma went straight to Stella's stall and produced an apple she'd apparently been saving. The horse took it gently, and Emma beamed like she'd just won the lottery. "She likes me," Emma said. "Of course she does," Vivian replied. "You're excellent company." They stayed until full dark, then walked back under a sky full of stars. Emma held Adrian's hand on one side and Vivian's on the other, swinging between them. "This is nice," Emma said. "All of us together." "Yeah," Adrian agreed. "It is." That night, after Emma was asleep, Adrian found Vivian in her workshop. She'd been working on a cabinet, sanding the wood smooth. The air smelled like sawdust and varnish. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure. Are you happy? Here, I mean, with us." Vivian set down her sandpaper. "Yeah, I think I am. It's strange. I spent so long thinking happiness was something you had to earn or achieve, but this just is. It's not perfect. We're not perfect. But it works. Emma asked me yesterday if you were going to be her mom." Vivian's eyes widened. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that's not how it works, that families come in all different shapes and we'd figure out ours as we went." "And?" "And she said that was fine, but could you at least teach her how to build things with wood, because I'm terrible at it." Vivian laughed. "I can do that." Adrian moved closer. They'd been dancing around this for weeks. The attraction, the possibility, the question of what they were to each other. Friends, definitely. Co-parents in a makeshift way. But something else, too. Something neither of them had quite named. "I'm not good at this," Adrian said. "Relationships, feelings, any of it. My wife used to say I approached romance like a business negotiation. That sounds exhausting." "It was, for both of us." He paused. "But with you, it's different. I don't feel like I need to perform or prove anything. I can just be." "I know what you mean. After Thomas died, I thought that was it. One great love per lifetime. But then you showed up and crashed into my truck, and I thought, okay, maybe there's more than one way to find home." "Is that what this is? Home?" "I think so, don't you?" Adrian pulled her close and kissed her. It wasn't perfect or movie dramatic or any of the things he'd imagined important moments should be. It was just real. Two people who'd been through hell finding something good in the aftermath. When they pulled apart, Vivian was smiling. "Took you long enough. I wanted to be sure." "Are you sure now?" "Getting there." The trial started in March. Adrian testified for 2 days straight, walking the jury through the evidence, the cover-up, his father's investigation. Marcus's lawyers tried to paint him as an unstable man seeking revenge, but Rachel shut that down quickly. Dennis Corbin testified next, visibly shaking but holding firm. Then Michael Torres, then Dr. Chen. One by one, they built the case. Marcus never took the stand. His lawyers advised against it. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Adrian was in Vermont when he got the call from Rachel. He was outside with Emma, helping her build a raised garden bed for vegetables she wanted to plant. "It's over," Rachel said. "Marcus is going away for a long time, minimum 25 years. Adrian sat down on the ground, hammer still in his hand. "Okay. You all right?" "I don't know. I thought I'd feel something. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction, but I just feel tired." "That's normal. You've been carrying this for months. Now you can put it down." After he hung up, Emma looked at him with concern. "Was that about Uncle Marcus?" "Yeah, baby. He's going to jail for a very long time." "Because of what he did to Grandpa?" "That's right." Emma thought about that while she hammered a nail into the wood. "Is that why we left New York? Because you needed to tell the truth about him?" "Part of it, yeah." "Good. I like it better here anyway." That evening, the three of them sat on the porch and watched the sunset. Vivian had made dinner, roasted chicken and vegetables from the garden they'd planted last month. Emma was covered in dirt from working outside all day, happy and exhausted. "Can I ask you guys something?" Emma said. "Sure," Adrian replied. "Are we going to stay here, like, forever?" Adrian and Vivian exchanged a glance. They'd talked about it in abstract terms, but never made it official. "Do you want to stay here forever?" Vivian asked. "Yeah, I like my school, and Stella, and the forest, and having both of you." "Then yeah," Adrian said. "I think we'll stay." "Can we get a dog?" "Don't push your luck, kid." Emma grinned and went back to her drawing. Later, after she'd gone to bed, Adrian and Vivian sat on the porch with glasses of wine, listening to the night sounds of the forest. "You know what I realized today?" Adrian said. "What?" "My father spent his whole life building something massive, an empire, a legacy, something that would outlast him. And in the end, it all came down anyway. But this?" He gestured to the barn, the forest, the light in Emma's window. "This is smaller, simpler, and it feels more real than anything I ever did in New York." "That's because it is real. It's not built on lies or other people's pain. It's just us doing our best." "You think that's enough?" "I think it's everything." Adrian thought about his father a lot in those quiet moments, about the man Richard Vale had been and the man he'd tried to become at the end, about the letter he'd left and the burden he'd passed down. Adrian had spent so much of his life trying to live up to his father's expectations, trying to be worthy of the empire Richard had built. But maybe that was never the point. Maybe the real inheritance wasn't the company or the money or the power. Maybe it was just the courage to admit when something was wrong and the strength to try to fix it, even when fixing it cost you everything. The foundation grew steadily over the next year. They helped 17 families navigate lawsuits against negligent corporations, funded 3 wrongful death cases that resulted in policy changes, partnered with advocacy groups pushing for stronger safety regulations. It wasn't glamorous work. There were no galas or ribbon cuttings or features in business magazines, just long hours and hard conversations and small victories that felt enormous to the people they helped. Emma turned 10. She still drew horses constantly, but she'd added other animals to her repertoire: dogs, cats, the deer that sometimes wandered through their yard. Vivian had taught her basic carpentry, and Emma had built a bird feeder that actually worked. Adrian had learned to split wood efficiently, grow vegetables, and fix things around the barn when they broke. He'd never been handy before. Turned out he just needed practice. And somewhere along the way, without anyone making a formal announcement or asking Emma's permission, Vivian became part of their family. Not replacing Adrian's late wife or Emma's mother, but filling her own space, building her own relationship with Emma that was entirely theirs. One evening, in late summer, almost 2 years after the crash that had changed everything, Adrian drove to the Hartford Cemetery where the victims of the collapse were buried. He'd been before, shortly after the trial, to pay his respects, but this time felt different. He found Thomas Ashford's grave easily. Someone had left fresh flowers, probably Vivian, who came every few months. Adrian added his own, a simple bouquet from the farmer's market. "I don't know if you can hear me," Adrian said quietly, "but I wanted to say thank you for loving Vivian the way you did. for being the kind of man who cared about doing his job right. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry my family's choices cost you your life." The wind rustled through the trees. Adrian stood there for a long time, letting the quiet settle around him. "I'm taking care of her," he said finally, "and she's taking care of me. And Emma, we're figuring it out together. I think you'd approve." He stayed until the sun started to set, then drove back to Vermont, back to the barn and the forest and the life he'd built from the ruins of the old one. Vivian and Emma were in the garden when he arrived, pulling weeds and arguing good-naturedly about whether tomatoes needed more or less water. They looked up when they heard his car. Emma waved. "Dad, come help us. Vivian says I'm overwatering, but I think she's wrong." "I'm always wrong according to you," Vivian called back. Adrian smiled and walked over to join them, dirt already on his knees before he even knelt down. This was it, he realized. This was the life his father had died trying to protect. Not the company or the money or the prestigious address. Just the simple freedom to live honestly, to look your kid in the eye and know you'd done right by them. To build something real with someone who'd seen you at your worst and stayed anyway. Richard Vail had spent 2 years gathering evidence and writing letters and preparing to burn down everything he'd built, all because he believed some things mattered more than success. He'd been right. And Adrian had finally learned the lesson. That night, after Emma had gone to bed and the dishes were done and the house was quiet, Adrian and Vivian sat on the porch like they did most evenings. The summer air was warm and thick with the smell of growing things. "What are you thinking about?" Vivian asked. "How strange it is. A year ago, I had everything society says you're supposed to want. Money, power, status. Now I've got a used truck, a job that barely pays, and a daughter who wants a dog we can't afford. And I've never been happier." Vivian leaned her head against his shoulder. "Funny how that works." "Yeah." They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies blink in the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Emma's bedroom light was still on. She was probably reading under the covers with a flashlight, thinking she was getting away with something. "I love you," Adrian said. The words came out easier than he expected. Vivian didn't seem surprised. "I know, I love you too." "That simple?" "That's simple." And it was. Not perfect, not without complications or challenges or moments of doubt, but simple in the way that mattered. Honest, clear, built on truth instead of pretense. Adrian thought about the man he'd been when he first crashed into Vivian's truck. Cold, controlled, measuring everything in terms of risk and reward. That man had been slowly dying for years, suffocated by the weight of living a lie. This man, the one who split wood and grew vegetables and helped his daughter build bird feeders, was messier, less certain. He made mistakes and admitted when he didn't know things and let people see him struggle. But he was real. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. The envelope his father had left him had contained 4 words on the outside. For Adrian. When ready. Adrian understood now. Not when the world was ready, or when the company was ready, or when the evidence was overwhelming enough to guarantee success. When Adrian was ready, when he was finally brave enough to choose truth over comfort. When he could look at the life he'd built and admit it wasn't worth protecting if it was built on blood and lies. His father had known Adrian would need time, would need to be pushed to the edge before he'd be willing to jump, and Vivian had been there to catch him. Not to save him, Adrian had saved himself in the end, but to remind him that falling wasn't the same as failing, that you could lose everything and still build something worth keeping. The foundation would help people. Emma would grow up knowing her father had chosen integrity over inheritance. And Adrian would spend the rest of his life trying to balance the scales, knowing they'd never quite even out, but trying anyway. Because that's what you did when you finally stopped running from the truth. You faced it, you dealt with the consequences, and you built something new from whatever pieces remained. Adrian stood and held out his hand to Vivian. "Come on, let's go to bed." "Romantic." "I'm working on it." They walked inside together, turning off lights as they went. Emma's room was dark now. She'd finally fallen asleep. Adrian checked on her like he did every night, making sure she was covered, picking up the flashlight she'd dropped on the floor. In the doorway, Vivian whispered, "She's good, Adrian. You raised a good kid." "We're raising a good kid." "Yeah, we are." And that was perhaps the biggest miracle of all, that from the wreckage of multiple tragedies, from murder and cover-ups and broken lives, Something good had grown, something simple and real and worth protecting. Not an empire, not a legacy, just a home. And sometimes that was enough.